Hello, everybody. So Sotek is on his way. He's been unavoidably delayed, but in the meantime, you've got me here to talk about some halflings because I love halflings. Halflings are great. And Sotek also likes us for us to introduce ourselves at the beginning of every show, so I'll take the time now to do that while we're waiting for him to arrive. My name is Ross Watson. I am a game designer and author for a lot of things for Warhammer, including Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer 40K. And halflings have been one of my favorite armies for a very, very long time. So my first exposure, of course, was Lumpen Krupp and his Fighting Cocks, which is a Dogs of War unit, mercenaries. You can acquire them in Warhammer Fantasy back in, I think, 6th or 7th edition, which was the time I was really into Warhammer Fantasy. They were just super cool. And I remember reading this story about Lumpen Krupp himself, like fighting and defeating a vampire lord in a White Dwarf article. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. The dice just utterly screwed that vampire player that day. But it cemented the legend of Lumpen Krupp in my heart. Yeah, we have a comment here saying second breakfast. That's probably where Sotek is having a second breakfast. It's very very halfling oriented. Oh, there he is.
Hello, hello. Oh, headphones aren't on.
Hey, welcome. I was just warming everybody up with my tales of Lumpen Krupp.
Now I can hear. Okay.
So I've introduced myself, and we have warmed up the crowd a little bit.
Hopefully everyone's doing well. Hi. Yeah, sorry, I was feeding birds outside, and it's like, oh shit, I gotta go. I am holding down the fort for my family. Oh, I didn't turn my lights on. But how are you doing, Ross?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing much better. I was injured for a little while, but life's doing much better now.
I'm sorry to hear that. What happened?
The TLDR is basically that I had I had like fluid buildup in like a part of my body, but it's all normal now. It was weird. The whole thing was weird.
Yeah, I was about to ask if you'd injured your tail, your skink tail.
Close. But yeah, hopefully everyone's doing good and stuff and all that jazz. Lots of things happening out in the Warhammer world these days. We're kind of on the cusp of a bunch of exciting stuff happening. Of that, we've got in the coming weeks, we've got another big Cathay book coming out soon, which is really exciting, which is going to have lots of new goodies in it. We've got the Tigermen coming to Warhammer a little later, which is once again really exciting. And then beyond that, I think in the world of 40K, I think most of the rumors say that we've got a new edition about to hit because they're doing their end of edition stuff at the moment, which is pretty damn cool. All exciting things, all good things.
Yeah, it's fun that Fantasy got the cat girls before 40K did.
Yeah. I do love that we somehow, which is bizarre to me. Like if someone had told me that we were going to get Tigermen as like an actual part of the setting instead of just being like a loosely referred to concept, even like 5 years ago, I would have assumed they were insane, like absolutely insane.
Yeah, it was a big surprise to me too, and I was just like, "Oh my god, Tigerman! Holy crap, it's so cool!"
Yeah, and they are, man, they're huge too. Those are some Bashiva. That is a muscular lady. She's absolutely massive, which is great. But we're not here to talk about any and all that stuff. We are here today to instead discuss halflings.
which are far less massive.
Yes, but they're just as they have just as prodigious of an appetite for new and exciting things, and also just food in general. The halflings of Warhammer Fantasy are, I really think, probably when I I'm gonna put words in their mouth a little bit here, but when I think about how Games Workshop looks at their own setting, I really feel like the halflings are probably one of the most underappreciated components of it. Because there are definitely times where it feels like Games Workshop kind of wants to try and pretend that the halflings are not a thing. Like they're kind of like, no, we didn't want to do that. Even though I love the halflings, I think a lot of people love the halflings. Because there's such a uniquely spectacular aspect of the setting. They just aren't as relevant necessarily when it comes to just the giant big armies, but even then they're more important than a lot of people think they are. But
at one point I had the head of IP at Games Workshop tell me some very salty language about halflings,
which is very appropriate for halflings.
Alan Merritt was not a big fan. Let's just put it that way.
That's actually really funny. It's one of those things where, like, understandably, when looking at them, I think people are like, oh, like they're too goofy, or they're too close to their Lord of the Ring counterparts. I am very loud compared to Ross. Okay, well, let me make Ross louder here.
I can also just speak up. And I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that you have often said we should introduce ourselves. I have already introduced myself, so...
Yeah, thank you. Because I also just don't do that every week. Because I forget. Let me know if that's better, guys. So yes, I am Ryan Sheelander, which is always weird introducing myself instead of Loremaster of Sotek. But I'm also more commonly known as Loremaster of Sotek, one of the biggest nerds that you'll find over in the Total War sphere when it comes to knowing the lore behind Warhammer Fantasy in particular, but I also keep up very well with Age of Sigmar and a bunch of other nonsense. And most importantly, I also you'll find me pretty much involved in anything Warhammer Fantasy related that has any sort of that's kind of come out. Like if there's like a fan film or any of those other things, that I'm probably involved in some way, shape, or form. Because you can even go watch that Chaos Rising fan movie, which was super duper fun, and I murder a guy in that, which is great.
Oh, that does sound like fun.
Yeah, killing people is a great time.
Yeah, I think halflings were overlooked even in Mordheim, weren't they? I don't think they had.
Yeah. I don't think they had a warband, or at least if they, I don't know if they ever had a warband.
You could get a hired sword or two, if I remember right, but I don't believe they ever had their own warband outside of like fan made stuff.
Yeah, I think they only had I am actually doing a quick check. Not the Knights of the Kitchen Table rules. That's fantastic. Yeah, I don't think they had official ones out of the magazine. I think they only had fan rules.
Yeah, and well, I mean that's true. I believe that's true for their army lists as well. Like the majority of the army lists I ever saw for halflings were in White Dwarf or fan sites.
Yeah, interestingly, there was a very, very professionally made Age of Sigmar army battle tome made for halflings. Like it was gorgeous, and they put a lot of incredible effort into it. It's very, very different than the it wasn't just like a bunch of like fan text and document. Like they made like a full thing with custom art and a bunch of other really, really gorgeous stuff, which just showed for me was such a good example of showing like how much people love them, despite the fact that I think GW tried for a good while to sort of just forget they existed, because especially when the Warhammer world blew up at the end of the end times, that was like just the end of the Halflings. Like they did not, Games Workshop did not bring them to Age of Sigmar. They don't exist in the setting.
That is a damn shame.
Yeah, because GW is just like, we don't like them. I remember there was actually quite a bit of excitement around when Silliness got their second edition book. Or no, it might have been their third edition book. Yeah, it was their third edition. When Silliness got their third edition book, they got the character Glutos or Skillion, who is this big wizard guy that like represents the aspect of gluttony. He's this like big old fat gluttonous dude. And on his mini, which is almost more of a diorama, because he's got this giant chariot thing with all these attendants around him. There's like a little halfling looking thing that's like feeding him grapes or whatever, and everyone lost their minds. We were like, oh my god, halflings, oh my god, halflings. And Games Workshop was like, no, it's homunculus, not a halfling. And everyone was like, oh, you guys suck. Boo these men, boo them. But anyway, so we're going to be chatting about them today, and we're going to be talking mainly about what makes them so gosh damn fun, and why people fell in love with them. Because contrary to popular belief, they're not really at all like the Lord of the Rings halflings, except for at the most surface level. They're quite different in my opinion, because they were very deliberately designed to almost be trope subversions. Like I really think their design, especially around like 6th edition in particular, was to try and be a gotcha for people that came in expecting the humble little lovely folk of the Shire, and instead meeting the rapscallion little bastards of the Moot, which are a very different group of individuals.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, these guys, they are, well, they were made by the old ones, according to lore, which is pretty awesome. And they were both, them and ogres are both highly resistant to chaos, which is pretty awesome. They live, of course, in the Moot, which is a province in the inside the empire bordered by Stirland and Averland. And the Moot is, well, I mean, it's what you would expect. It's a lot of farmland, a lot of orchards, a lot of green rolling hills.
Yeah, the Moot is, like, frankly, just it's a beautiful place. The thing that's very interesting about the halflings, when it comes to the Moot as well, is that they're not actually native to it. The Moot is a place that the halflings ended up at eventually, but what little tidbits we have about their origins suggest that they came from further out east, likely where the ogres originated from, though we don't know why they left. Because they haven't received a ton of focus, one of the big mysteries about the halflings is literally their origin, about when did they arrive in the empire, because they weren't there the entire time. Like, if memory serves, I don't believe they were there during the War of Vengeance, and I also don't believe they were there. I can't remember if they were there during Sigmar's time. But they likely came from the same place that the ogres did, but that leaves the big question in there of why did they leave? And that is like a complete mystery that has never been answered.
Well, we know that the Mootland was created in 1010, I see, by Emperor Ludwig the Fat, which is a great name.
I can't imagine what the halflings could have offered him that would have swayed him to do something that was probably very unpopular with Stirland and Everland at the time.
So I think there are some notes that the halflings had been living in that area for some time.
Oh yeah,
before 1010, and when the Emperor Ludwig gave them the Mootland. Probably their farming clans were most likely integrated into some of the many early human tribes during the Sigmarite Age. That's the theory that I'm working on anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if so, one of the popular theories that like we see Lawhammer explore in Andy Law's roleplay game is that the halflings left along with the ogres when the Great Maw was created. So when the Great Maw comes thundering down and slams and wipes out the ogre homeland, and forces the ogres to leave, that perhaps the halflings were there as well, which still would have given the halflings plenty of time to make the journey all the way west into the Empire, and perhaps staying ahead of the of like all of the struggles that would have come with the loss of their homeland, because that the lands that the ogres originate from were like these really wonderful, beautiful field lands where there was incredible amounts of bountiful life. In that the ogres were more of a nomadic hunting tribe, but halflings tend to be known more as a stationary farming communities as opposed to wanderlusting ogre-like communities. And they also don't seem to have that relationship with the Great Maw, which that I would posit, kind of agreeing a bit more with what Russ said earlier, seems to suggest that the halflings weren't there when the Great Maw came down because it didn't imprint on them like it did with the ogres.
It's worth pointing out that we're talking a lot about ogres right now because halflings have like a very strange, unexplained affinity for ogres. They work with them. They're very friendly to them. In fact, man-eaters, which are the ogres that hire themselves out and travel far from their homeland, often have halfling cooks as part of their camp followers.
Yeah, and it's the big thing with that is that man, I want to say it goes back as far as 6th edition. There's always been kind of a note in like the grand history of the setting that the ogres and the halflings were created at the same time. And that there is very much it's never directly stated, but it's always very deeply implied that they were created likely in the same place by the same old one, or the same group of old ones. But the halflings and the ogres were unfinished, is the popular theory behind it, where the ogres were left without a fully developed, more, shall we say, balanced form of intellect, while the halflings, while they were very, very, they had the smarts and the resistance to chaos. They, of course, are incredibly diminutive in size. Though one of the things I always laugh about is the halflings were always just, even when using like a god, like that god perspective language, whenever this godlike entity that's telling us that the halflings are made by the old ones, would almost always use the term that the halflings were unfinished because they were diminutive and vulgar, which I always found super funny.
Again, the head of IP was quite vulgar when he was describing them to me. So that is definitely a viewpoint that Games Workshop itself had for a long time. Yeah, my research tells me that the halflings are explicitly described as an experiment by the old ones to create a race immune to chaos or resistant at the very least. But the joke in the community, at least as far as I'm aware, is that the halflings were more of a panic design of the old ones. Like they were deliberately like, oh shit, we got to do something. And they already knew that ogres were kind of resistant. So they were like, okay, well, being fat helps. So let's build that into the halflings.
Yeah, it turns out all you need to hold off chaos is just a consistent level of blubber.
Obviously, that's a fan theory I found very entertaining, but I don't know. It's not necessarily true.
You just gotta put the chaos exploitative. You gotta put the soul in the stomach, and chaos has a hard time getting to you. But we do need to get caught up on super chats and stuff.
Yeah.
Let's do that here. We got our first one. Bowfoot suggest. It says budgest, but I assume you mean suggest the battles between fishmen and halflings. I cannot imagine how this would easily go down outside of like having a halfling cook on your ship. Like the ship cook is a halfling, and the ship gets attacked by fishmen. But you know what would happen is that when the ship successfully thwarts those fishmen and kills them, the halfling would make a mean fucking fishman fillet.
Yeah, there'd be a filleting knife involved and a lot of fish hooks, I believe, on the halfling side.
They would be eating great. They would be eating fishmen like would be feeding the crew for a while. It would be good stuff. The halflings could make it work. Halflings, this does lead into a bit of a darker aspect of halflings. That's actually interesting to kind of focus on for a moment, which is that, like we kind of said earlier, the Halflings of Warhammer are not, it's Warhammer. They're not like the lovely, wholesome, yada yada stuff of Lord of the Rings. They are Warhammer-fied. It's a dark and terrible universe where violence is constant and survival is difficult. And one of the big things behind Halflings is that they can and will eat anything. Now, they don't tend to be like ogres in that they don't tend to prefer to eat everything raw, at least modern halflings. But halflings are known for, there are rumors, unwholesome rumors, that some halflings would say is utterly ridiculous, of course. But there are rumors abound that halflings will be full-on cannibals, or they will happily cook up and eat human or dwarf or elf, and that there are even halfling cookbooks that exist out there that are incredibly rare and hush-hush spoken of, often more passed down to family recipes of like how to properly cook and prepare a human being as a meal, which is horrifying, but also worth noting that to the halflings, that's not actually cannibalism, so that should be fair game.
A lot of lore suggests that they their appetites extend beyond food, though, that they are also very hyper libidinous, is I think the term I saw. I think it's possibly the best.
Yes, they are not only experts at cooking pork, but they're also experts at merely the art of porking. Yeah, there's a whole thing if you read through like any of the Black Library books that have halfling characters or halflings involved, that halflings, they will quite literally bone down anything. Like they are like human, dwarf, elf, like as long as you are who knows, like I don't know if they're as crazy as Avenlanders are accused of being, but I don't know if they're out there taking sheep wives, but they are known to have an insatiable appetite in many different aspects of life. It's kind of a defining feature of theirs, but they will happily entertain anyone for the evening. Like they're not picky.
I just remembered they were in Mordheim as part of the Stirland warband.
Were they? Okay.
Yeah, if you played Stirland, you could have halflings as part of
They
your group.
deserve to have their own. They deserve to have their own Mootland one.
Oh yeah. So the Moot, I mean, what's interesting about the Moot is it's got its own elector count.
It does. Mostly due to. Oh, wait. Before we go any further, sorry, we got more super chats we gotta get through. Brock 6000. How are Warhammer Halflings different from other IPs?
We're literally telling you.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're focusing our efforts. But ultimately, it boils down to the Halflings of Warhammer Fantasy were deliberately designed, and they're not all like this. There are Halflings that are much more heroic and good-natured and stuff, and you will encounter those, especially when you're dealing with the roleplay game, where the Halflings get much more focus because they're one of the playable species. But the Halflings of Warhammer Fantasy are very much they are often described as being vulgar in many aspects of that. The Warhammers, the Halflings of Warhammer Fantasy are they quite literally, the way they speak other races' languages, they will they speak in a way that is offensive to other Warhammer cultures, which is a very amusing descriptor, but is said to be very accurate. Like, the language they use is so foul that many humans find them to be inappropriate company. They're also, they live very much by a culture. Halflings have a very community focused culture, in that the concept of ownership does not exist to them like it does to other groups. So because of that, Halflings, they don't see it as stealing, but everyone else sees it very much as stealing, where if the Halflings see something they like, they just take it. They'll just take it because it belongs to everyone. And that causes a significant amount of issues where you'll read quite a few books of that whenever people are passing through the Moot, especially armies or baggage trains, they'll talk about bolt everything down, because if we don't, the Halflings are going to literally steal everything we have. So
don't they have their own dialect called Mootish?
Yeah, they have their own language. So, and it's likely very close to Grumbarth, which is the ogre tongue. But they those are the main differences. And then one of the things that's particularly unique about the Halflings is that, just exactly like the ogres, they are extremely resistant to chaos, to a heightened degree. It is incredibly rare to find a Halfling that has a mutation. And it's even more rare to come across a Halfling that has willingly or otherwise fallen to chaos. Because of their own personal resistance to it, and also Halflings do have an incredibly strong sense of community, they seem both culturally and physically and spiritually just crazy resistant to chaos, which is a very fascinating aspect.
If I may, I think one of the things that's kind of funny about them is that if you can imagine Silliness, oh, hey, these are people that really like to eat and like to screw. But the fact is, the Halflings, to them, this is just normal life. They don't take it to an extreme because they're already living it and they're very comfortable with it, and nobody worries about it. So, an excess to a Halfling is yeah, I had a little too much to eat last night and passed out under the table, and then had sex with my girlfriend's mother later that afternoon, and it was fine. Nobody cared. So.
Yeah, it's almost like in some ways they don't seem to have much in the way of a concept of shame, at least culturally, and in some ways that rather amusingly insulates them against certain predations of chaos, which is a very funny and curious potential way that could be interpreted. But you could also just boil it down to the old ones just invested all of their skill points into chaos resistance and left everything else as a dump stat. Let's see. We've got Skitari Boy. Who eats more, Warhammer Fantasy Halflings or 40k Ratlings? I feel like the Halflings have much more available to them to eat.
That's a fact. Well, Halflings and Ratlings are they're very similar, right? In the 40k side. Actually, what's surprising is you were talking about how Games Workshop has largely ignored Halflings, and Ratlings just got a kill team just a few months back, or
Must
last
be nice.
year. Yeah, right. I was like, why isn't there if 40k has a Ratling kill team, why isn't there a what is it? I forget the name of the skirmish game for fantasy right now, but it'd be really cool if they had a.
Oh, fantasy doesn't have one yet. We have the AOS
Sigmar.
one. We have Underworlds and we have Warcry.
Warcry, that's what I was thinking of. Warcry.
Yeah,
So
but there's no Halflings in AOS. They don't exist.
But it would be easy. Warcry is an easy way to like bring them in, right? Because you can make it just small.
I feel like there has to be a like break in case of emergency glass in the AOS studio that just has a halfling. Halflings are now in the setting sitting behind it, which would be absolutely spectacular. That being said, Halflings did have a pretty decent tabletop range back in like 6th edition. You could bring a sizable Dogs of War contingent of Halflings. Because you could have like Halfling slingers, Halfling, there was like melee Halflings that had like these big old sticks. There was the soup cannon, which was beyond infamous.
The soup cannon is actually on a vehicle called the Half Tank, which is an unofficial but really interesting steam tank variation. What you're thinking of is probably the Halfling hot pot.
Yes, the hot pot,
the catapult that fired soup.
Which is
go ahead.
It was the dumbest thing in the universe, but I loved it. Lots of people loved it. If you showed up on a tabletop and your opponent was playing with a Halfling hot pot, you knew that was frankly the coolest fucking person in the local club. Like that dude, that was the most fun, awesome guy in your locals if he brought a Halfling hot pot.
So the core troops were the Halfling militia or Halfling archers. There was also the field wardens, which were their
the field wardens
skirmishers. They had rangers or scouts or thieves, depending on which edition it was in, which are their stealthy infiltrators. Then they had Halfling cooks, crazed cooks, which were described as having eaten too many spicy dumplings, and they were kind of like goblin fanatics in a black goblin unit.
Night goblins.
Night goblins. Thank you. And they'd come out and they'd swing their heavy cook pot as a weapon. The commander was a Moot general, and they had here's some of my favorites is their cavalry. They had war sheep riders, battle ram riders, goat riders, swan riders, which were their aerial flying cavalry. Great. They also had one edition had Great Eagle riders, which probably before what else got it. Then there was the Reaper and the Shearer, which were converted agricultural harvest machines pushed into battle by war sheep. And then there was the Half Tank, which was a slow but tough war machine armed with a soup cannon. It's essentially a crude Halfling equivalent of a steam tank.
Yeah, one of the things that one of the units that always, or the roleplay game very much earned my love with the Badger Riders, which is something that the roleplay game added that did not exist in the traditional tabletop. Because I love the Badger Riders. They're so stupid looking, but they're like they bring me like infinite amounts of joy. Like they're just so fun.
So Skitari Boy, I'm going to say Warhammer Fantasy Halflings eat more because they have better opportunities to eat more.
Yes, I also think they definitely seem to be more to be porking on a more regular basis. They get it because it's a canonical aspect of them that is probably another reason why some guys from GW hate them so much of being like these goddamn halflings.
I honestly feel like this. So you know that orcs are basically a parody of soccer hooligans.
Yeah.
I strongly feel that there is some sort of regional culture that
there has to be.
Are parodying in the UK, but I'm unfortunately just not familiar enough with the cultural regions of the UK to say which one it is or might be.
Oh, we'll talk about the Rooster Riders. We're not quite there yet, but we'll get to those. The Callan tier. Are there any morphogenic changes between halfling populations like with humans? Different skin tones based on equatorial distance. Some with pointy ears. Some can grow beards, etc. So this is mainly tackled in the roleplay game. It's not something that you'll see like the army game ever bother dealing with. Most of the halflings that you deal with are from the Moot, which is not a very large area. There are said to be halflings that are like born and raised in other parts of the empire, and some that even travel further afield in the world. But the vast majority of halflings are from a very, 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 very localized community. That being said, if you go like look through all of the different interpretations in the role play and a bunch of other stuff that you can find there, there is a good amount of info that boils around. There are halflings of different skin tones. You do see that. And it usually will boil down to differences between the particular family tribes of the halflings. Halflings have a very, 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 very well-established clan system. And the thing about the halfling clans is that there are, so from a halfling perspective at least, notable differences between the various clans that come down to physiological, but it'll usually be stuff like height versus how like the shape, like little, no, I wouldn't go so far as to say pointed ears, but like slight differences, the size and shapes of their ears. Their feet can often be a big thing. The halflings, just like Lord of the Ring halflings, don't tend to wear shoes. They have dogs out all the time. One of some universal things about halflings, though, is as far as I am aware, halflings cannot grow facial hair. If you ever see a halfling that is growing facial hair, that is not a halfling. That is a gnome pretending to be a halfling. But the differences between the various halfling clans, at least those in the old world, are relatively few. It is extremely likely that there are still halflings that live out there's likely unique halfling clans that live in Grand Cathay. I would say that's almost guaranteed. We also do know that there are halflings that travel around with certain ogre tribes. So like if you go to the ogre kingdoms in the Mountains of Borne, the Feastmasters tribe has an entire clan of halflings as their chefs. Who now they may have been acquired not to the halflings, shall we say, free will, but they now live there with the ogres and are part of why the Feastmasters are so successful. But there are different groups that you'll find in different parts of the world, and it's likely that you would find some notable differences between those halflings. But pretty much all of the lore that we have on halflings only tends to focus on the halflings of the Moot, or at best halflings of the Empire. So the differences that we see beyond like occasional skin color stuff tends to be pretty rare.
Yeah, but they do obsessively record their ancestry, which I think probably has a lot to do with the fact that they're so free in their affections. If you
will. They gotta keep track.
They gotta keep track. So they like to trace back their genealogy and lineage. So I imagine there's probably characteristics for each different clan that are probably recorded as part of that genealogical record keeping.
I would agree very much with that. Necroplayer, while I love the concept and aesthetic of halflings, I do agree with the take that I wish they were less pure silly. Like, as funny as it is, we really do need more than half a dozen separate pie wars clogging their timeline. Yeah, the halflings, I think as time has gone on, there has been more and more efforts to try and start taking them more seriously, particularly from like 4th edition roleplay. There is like the continuous note of like, the Pie Wars, but you do have more serious elements that have started to creep in more and more, like stuff about how the Halflings have participated quite a bit in the wars against Sylvania. The Vampire Wars, the Halflings were quite literally on the front lines. They were on the front lines against Vlad, Conrad, and Manfred. And one of the things that is often not focused that much on, but could be potentially expanded into being a genuinely fascinating story, is that the Moot survived. Like, the Moot held out against the ravages of the vampire counts. Even though there have been efforts by various vampires to assault the Moot. That's why field wardens are such a big necessary component. Field wardens exist not only to deal with them, but also to deal with greenskins. The Halflings tend to get a pretty bad rap from like main headquarters GW stuff, like army books, because anytime the Moot is mentioned, it's almost always a scenario of either the Empire having like a goofy political situation, or more likely it's like a mention in like a greenskin book or an ogre book or some other bad guys book where it'll talk about they like go to the Moot and they just like insta kill and eat tons of halflings, which kind of makes you wonder how they haven't gone extinct at this point, if it was like they're just getting that run over on a regular basis.
Their halflings are, according to my research, they're quite resistant to vampirism, or at least considered very poor feeding for vampires.
Yeah.
which helps. And they during the vampire count incursions, they adopted this thing called the Moonrow Doctrine, which was a vow to treat any major threat to the Empire as a threat to the Moot. And so halfling contingents appeared in several battles against the undead. They were just often, left out by Imperial scholars.
Yeah. Everyone likes to forget about the poor halflings, but they're an interesting bunch. There are serious aspects to them, but like me and Ross have already kind of discussed, one of the things that seems to be very much the case is there has been a genuine bias in some parts of real world GW that would prefer the halflings just not be a thing. And that is very much reflected into they don't get to appear as much in serious material. In Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, they showed up a ton in 2nd edition, 3rd edition, and 4th edition. I think they were in 1st edition as well as one of the playable groups. But 4th edition has done a lot of really fun things with them, in my opinion. They get treated much more seriously. One of the big things that you would see in Black Library books when you were dealing with halflings and someone was you had an author that was taking them, like trying to do something serious with them, like Bill King or William King, who wrote Gotrek and Felix, did quite a bit with halflings. And one of the things that he often would lean very heavily into is that halflings, when they're not being portrayed in a very, very silly way, they're being taken more seriously, they tend to show up a lot in criminal organizations within the Empire. So like when you're dealing with gangs that wield significant amounts of power in places like Altdorf and Nuln and Ubersreich and all that stuff.
Marienburg.
The Marienburg, the halflings have criminal families. And halflings are one of the most dangerous criminal groups you can go up against. And one of the suggestions behind it is that because halflings are often seen as these silly little guys who are barely bigger than children, that they're physically diminutive and they look very young, they can't grow facial hair and all this stuff. So a lot of people don't take them seriously and treat them as jokes. And because of that, the criminal aspects of the halflings, so the family clans that have become crime families, or those halflings that have taken up positions within criminal organizations, they overcompensate for to get people to take them seriously, which translates into them being some of the scariest motherfuckers alive, where they are exceedingly violent, and they are incredibly gifted at torturing people. Because they want you to take them seriously. So if you don't take them seriously, they will do horrible things to you to basically get you to regret your life's decisions leading up to that moment.
A good example of this is the character Big Figure from the Watchmen comics, who is a dwarf, a little person who is a crime boss, and he has to act out more because he needs that respect.
Dino Man. So I missed the Tiger Warrior stream, but something I would note: the arrival of Tiger Warriors may not be great for the fishermen because, despite the cat stereotype, tigers are really good swimmers. Both them and jaguars are excellent in water, which is at best is debatable. Which is best is debatable. From my online research, it seems tigers are more powerful swimmers, but jaguars are more agile. I hope that leads to a war in the Discord about people arguing about whether tigers or jaguars are better swimmers. That would entertain me immensely. But thank you for the fun fact, Adam. Bobfoot. Actually, you're Ryan Biddlepop. No, I can't remember. I know you've explained to me where Blittlepop comes from, and I always forget. And I feel like my brain. Oh no, that's right. It came from y'all's stream. That's where that came from.
Well, it's a Dungeons and Dragons goddess of the sea. Blibdlepoop is her full name.
Blibdlepoop.
Yeah, and she ploop, I believe, not poop.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's a reference to that goddess from Dungeons and Dragons. By the way, I'm wearing a D&D shirt today because I didn't have anything for halflings, but D&D, of course, has halflings. So
that does. Bloop. That's like, oh my god, I hate that. That's like Lizardman 5th edition's level of naming a character. That's terrible.
You mean like tic-tac-toe?
Yes. It's that level of bad. Neil Zanjay, hi. Humans, elves, and ogres have spread all over the world. Wouldn't halflings and dwarves also done this over millennia? What's your headcanon? So you don't even have to headcanon this. There are halflings and dwarfs that live all over the world. In that, like, Grand Cathay has full-on dwarf quarters and halfling quarters in several of their cities, like Shenyang and Beisai and I can't remember or Beichai. So they're out there. They're not like full-on factions. I mean, you could debate that the Chaos Dwarfs are a dwarf faction that lives far afield, but the main difference here between the races that you've mentioned and the halflings and dwarfs is that halflings and dwarfs are far less common to see as large groups that travel on naval vessels, which tends to make them far more of a rare sight when you go abroad. But like, there are tons of halflings in Lustria in the colonies. There's a whole bunch of halflings that have made the journey over to the Lustrian colonies, like Skeggy, and all those joints who have taken up permanent residence. So not unusual to see them there at all. I would say that you would very likely encounter halflings in Lothern, where humans from the Empire are allowed to have residence and allowed to visit. There's almost assuredly halflings that have made that journey as well in those human vessels. Dwarfs are a bit more of a rare situation because dwarfs tend to be a bit more insular. And when they travel and establish a home, they tend to do so in mountains almost exclusively. And that tends to be much more restrictive about where exactly they can end up. And they also, enough of them have to travel that they can successfully establish a hold. So that has been a very limiting aspect of how the dwarfs are able to set up new communities in very, very distant lands. You know, they did successfully set up dwarf holds in like the Mountains of Morn, the Mountains of Norska, and of course the original dwarf hold down in the Southlands, being Kadak Zorn. But realistically, for the Dawi, there's not a good way for them to set up holds globally. You know, like in the mountains of Nagaroth, for instance. Though, according to Total War, you know, they were like, oh yeah, Grombrindle's over there. And there's like a whole landmark building over there. So it's not impossible. And we do know there's like the Mine of the Bearded Skulls in the Sotek Spine Mountains, which also suggests that there were likely dwarves, perhaps one in Lustria a long time ago. But if they are still over there, then they either were wiped out or they're so insular that no one knows about them. But shrug.
My feeling is that wherever you'll find men, you will also find halflings. Typically, they assimilate very easily and very well into human societies. It's just that they tend to be overlooked. They tend to be, marginalized by any kind of record keeping or any kind of storytelling. So the fact that we just probably haven't heard much about them, but they're out there. That's what I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Elemental exposure. Create our own Moot Elder, Blingbo Swaggins. I refuse. I utterly refuse on every level. Thank you for the 3 months of membership. Stephen Lucas, if we get halflings in Age of Sigmar, and they join the ogres like originally intended, some monster hunter inspired monster hunters that get like super strength halflings from good cooking, Toriko manga skill level. I wouldn't hate it. It would be that would be interesting. I think there's been like some rumors bouncing about that the halflings might return as part of the cities of Sigmar. Personally, I agree with you that if they were going to return halflings, I would much prefer that they come back as a part of the ogres line. It would make me so happy if the halflings returned alongside like a new ogres book, because that would allow them to be a substantial part of the faction. Because the ogres of Age of Sigmar do not have the big focus on like snotlings. Snotlings, if memory serves, don't even.
Do you mean Noblars?
Yes, Noblars, not snotlings. Jesus. Yes, Noblars. If memory serves, I don't think Noblars exist in Age of Sigmar. I'm trying to remember. No, you can have no, you do have Noblars. No, Noblars are still a thing. I had to think about it for a second. Noblars are still a thing, but they're not a big focus of the faction. Having halflings return and be a part of the faction, which I think that would actually help the ogre glutton side of the range expand in an interesting way. But I could also see them reappearing as part of the cities of Sigmar as well. Those would be. It would be certainly doable. But yeah, if they did return to AOS, though, I would not want them to return unless they were going to be given actual minis and be part of actual ranges. I wouldn't want them to be like a background faction.
So the newer lore says that halflings can't use magic, but I think you could certainly extrapolate that maybe they do. It's always explained as secret cooking tricks that they are performing,
like they wouldn't necessarily need to perform spellcraft to do a form of cooking a la alchemy, right? Where you have the idea of like, oh, the halflings cook with certain monster ingredients and it gives them enhanced abilities. Like that could be extremely doable,
right, without technically being magic, right? I mean, that would be really cool.
Yeah, especially in Age of Sigmar, because Age of Sigmar magic is literally everywhere. Like it's a physical thing that can be interacted with.
In the clouds. It's even in the clouds in Age.
Yeah, good old your good old breath of Grugni up there. The Callantir. I love how Warhammer Fantasy roleplay explores halflings' dark sides. Yes. Well, if you want a faction to feel like it's a part of the Warhammer world, they do need to have darker sides. Like nobody in Warhammer is squeaky clean by any stretch of the imagination. Like they should be incredibly like you want depth to your factions. Because that's one of the things that I think a lot of people love about Warhammer is that it it gives off the vibes of a quote unquote grounded fantasy setting, where it feels more like it has the struggles of real life in a lot of ways, where the struggles of real life is that morality is complicated. And a lot of the times it's not about good and evil. It's about doing what you can to get by, or doing what you can in order to, like, even if you meet someone that you're like, well, that person's objectively evil, they don't think they are. And they think they're doing something for either the right reason, or they think they're doing something for like some greater good or some greater cause. And halflings, especially because of the disadvantages they suffer due to their size and inability to wield magic and all this stuff, the links they would have to go to in order to be successful in difficult times and difficult places would probably lead them to do very horrific things. Because survival is hard.
Yeah, I mean, that's true for everybody. And like you pointed out, I think, halflings have to work a little bit harder to be taken seriously, which often means they may go a little bit more extreme. Maybe even as mercenaries, maybe even as shopkeepers or merchants. They might be more ruthless than you might otherwise assume, because they need to make sure everyone treats them seriously.
Let's start, Chris. Thank you so much for gifting a sub to Castrated. Thank you so much. That's very nice. I got your name right. I don't know if you heard about this, Ross, but so his name, I've been pronouncing this as Kaz or Castrated for years. Years. Until I was in a stream with a different content creator who's like, isn't his name Castrated? And I was like, no, surely he would have said something. Terrible. Necroplayer. One of my favorite things about halflings is their unashamedly blunt, honest, and crass way of speech. It's funny, unique, and fits with Warhammer. Yeah, halflings are known to not be big into lying in Warhammer Fantasy, which kind of leans into the whole like aspect of their quote-unquote vulgarity. Is that they can be brutally honest. And there's also very few topics that they seem unwilling to broach. In fact, I cannot think of a topic that they're not willing to discuss, which can make other cultures in Warhammer profoundly uncomfortable, because halflings are very prone to oversharing.
Yes, they are.
Like
TMI is part of their culture. TMI.
Yeah, they are more than happy to discuss the finer details of any aspect of life. And that can be not something other people want to hear in polite company, so to speak. If there is a halfling among you, there's probably no such thing as polite company at that point. Unless that halfling has assimilated very well into Imperial culture. Or the culture of wherever they happen to be, which, granted, they are good at doing. But yeah, especially if you meet a halfling from the Moot, they will not hesitate to say things that most people would be like, you can't say that. What are you doing? Which is great, because that can make them like very, very funny, amusing characters. But it also allows them to be characters that can broach topics that others will not, for reasons that may not necessarily be good. They're like, halflings can actually be notable agents of change, not in the Tzeentch sense, but like in a positive sense, in that they can force discussions because of their own curiosity, that can result in people focus in dealing things that they otherwise wouldn't. But most of the time, it tends to result more in like awkward situations or people being put on the spot because a halfling asks about some like asks some question about their appearance or some very obvious thing that is considered like no, you shouldn't, like, put a halfling and a slayer in a room together and wait how long before the halfling starts asking the slayer questions that's going to make the slayer very upset.
Yeah, the character Jan Moss from Ted Lasso is the good example of this. It's constantly just being blunt and saying things and asking questions that no one should be asking, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. N7 Greenfire, thank you very much. Hear me out. Halflings could be resurrected into Age of Sigmar as worshippers of Alariel, which he uses as scouts to keep an eye on humans. Actual badger riding knights with nature magic. Could be fun. Like that would be that'd be fine. The Halfling fan book that was made for AOS, which I'm actually going to look it up.
Is this the badger? Do they have badger riders?
No, I don't think they have badger riders, sadly. But the Nomad Feastmasters, that's what they're called. The Nomad Feastmasters range are they're very, very, very pro Alariel. Like everyone in AOS tends to focus on very what's the word I'm looking for? Tends to focus on worshiping one of the various gods or interacting with the gods. There are like quote unquote atheistic factions, so to speak. But the Nomad Feastmasters are incredibly pro Alariel. So if anyone has an interest in this, I will post a link to where you can find a good amount of the. Let's see if I can actually get to the page that has the army book in it. Oh, there it is. I will post this link in the chat. So if anyone's like Nomad Feastmasters, that sounds super cool. I want to know more about that. I will post it in chat. But they've got like halflings flying on giant flying roosters and a bunch of other goofy shit. Sadly, I think they stopped updating the range in November of 2022. So it's a bit out of date. But if anyone is they've got a whole lore section, custom art units, a bunch of other really, really cool stuff. So there you go. The Calendar. There's an old White Dwarf article that says halflings came to the world on a colony spaceship, which then broke up in orbit and crashed. Old ones fiddled with them afterwards. I would say that is probably an extremely old White Dwarf article that is probably no longer relevant to Warhammer Fantasy as a setting. But if you wanted to use this as your personal interpretation of them into the setting, you could absolutely go with the idea that the halflings are a unique form of aliens that crash landed on the Warhammer Fantasy planet, and then the old ones started messing with them. I feel like
40k ratlings at that point.
Yeah, at that point they'd just be ratlings, basically. Yeah, I have never heard that before. So that's either before my time or that's such a deep cut that it's just been like beneath one of my blind spots. That is interesting. I don't think personally I vibe with that because I feel like that messes with like their relationship with the ogres in a way that I don't find that intriguing. Personally, I would find that takes away from their story rather than adds to it. But if it's something that you wanted to work with and run with, you absolutely could. Dino Man, thank you for the bidleys. Turns out that resistance to chaos is the same as resistance to cold. You just need blubber for insulation. Please ignore the fact that I'm pretty sure there are chaos whales. There are indeed chaos whales. Calling them chaos whales makes it seem more like they have an allegiance, which I would say is not really it. It's more like there's horrifically mutated monster whales that live in the Sea of Claws, or the
Wolfric hunts them, doesn't he?
Yeah, Norska does. Norska has a notable whale hunting culture. And many of those whales have like horrific mutations and would be what you would probably consider a chaos whale, but they don't tend to be like affiliated or joining alongside any of the various chaos factions.
Now you've got me wondering if any of them are sapient and can cast spells.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past the setting. Like, maybe one of the great lords of the fishermen is just a giant pissed off whale who could say, Wolf, make a Halfling DLC for the Empire. Yes, one of the things that people have been very eagerly awaiting, myself included, is Creative Assembly giving us what the people want, and the people want Halflings for the Empire, because that's traditionally how you ran them in 6th edition Warhammer Fantasy, is that if you were playing an Empire faction, you could take Halflings as part of your army without them. I believe they didn't count against your Dogs of War point limit. So instead of being locked purely to your rare choice slot, I believe they could be special or rare choice slots. But you could actually take a pretty considerable amount of Halflings in an Empire army. I believe they were slightly more difficult to take with other factions. But they did, but I would love to see them come to Total War. One of my big bucket list items for Total War would quite literally be a Dogs of War DLC that just adds a bunch of different regiments that could be recruited by like appropriate factions from pretty much anywhere in the world. So like if you controlled the Moot, you would have the ability to recruit Halfling units. Just like I would love if you controlled like the Temple of Rig or whatever it is over in Lustria, you could recruit Amazons. And if you owned like a territory up in the Eastern Steppes, you could recruit Hobgoblin units and stuff like that. Like, I would just love to see all the different Dogs of War get added to the game. That would be awesome. Just as like mercenaries.
I support this 200,000%. I'm a big fan of this idea.
Biofoot. So there's a lot of inbreeding in Halflings then. Almost certainly. That seems likely. Though if that is the case, Halflings seem pretty immune to the effects of inbreeding. But Halflings do have a very, very, very well-established clan culture. I can't remember if the Halflings avoid inbreeding or not.
Well, they do trace their genealogy very carefully.
Yeah, so
they have a document called the Halfenlever where they record all this. And
yeah, and in a Halfling culture, it's considered like a very important aspect to be able to remember like a staggering amount of your family tree. So honestly, no, I don't think they do inbreed very much. Because the Halflings have like a almost obsessive knowledge of tracking all of the various like genetics. And they take a lot of deep pride in it, and they have a lot of clan identity. It could be that I'm not sure where Halflings draw the line, you know, as far as like how many cousins you have to be away from before it's fair game. Because like, you know, it's kind of one of those things where inbreeding is bad, okay? But if you want to get super technical, like all of humanity comes from a common ancestor, which means that everyone's at least distantly related in some way, shape, or form. It's more about making sure you're far enough away related.
I'm actually going to push back a little bit on this one. I do think that they inbreed. Partially because their culture just, you know, very casual sex, even casual affairs outside of marriage are a part of their culture. And again, I will refer you back to Alan Merritt. He called them pie-eating sister fuckers. That's what he called them. So,
well, I mean, okay, that comes from the top. So, I mean, there
right,
you go.
That's literally the head of IP at the time describing in this way. I think that they do. I'm sure that they keep track genealogically, partially in order to ensure that they don't create massive problems with inbreeding. But it's difficult for me to imagine Halflings passing up an opportunity just because it's a cousin or a sister.
That's very true.
You know, something along those lines. It's sibling, I should say sibling, cousin or sibling.
Yeah. And, you know, it could very well be that part of the Halflings' like great resistance to chaos could be that they're also resistant to like all forms of mutation. Not like, so it could be that while halflings have like interesting genetic differences and dominant traits stand out, that it could be that the halflings are more resistant to genetic concerns from things like inbreeding. Or it very much could be like Ross says, where maybe they have a very different definition of when too much inbreeding is a problem. And just culturally, they're culturally and physiologically, where they draw what they would consider inbreeding is much more strict and narrow than what humans would.
Yeah, a different definition, I think, is probably a good place to start.
Super Orlock. Remember, kids, due to math, a halfling with a rapier and shield can open up your lower major arteries without you being able to reach them. Due to math. Halflings are an interesting group in that obviously their size makes them not like incredibly strong. Even when you have a halfling that is stronger than you would expect, which is most of them, they do have more strength and weight to them than you would necessarily expect based on their size. But halflings are actually quite a bit more dangerous than many people give them credit for. Now, halflings generally are described as preferring to fight at range. They are very, very nasty at range. Halflings are obviously, because of like kind of like the idea of like, oh, field wardens, and they're out in the fields and stuff. You have the archers, but you also have the slingers. Many of the halfling slingers will have the full-on staff slings. So it's not just like a little sling they hold in their hand, but they have a big old staff that they can really get some momentum going. And if there's anything we've learned from David and Goliath, or if you've ever actually see someone use a rock sling in real life, they're actually fucking terrifying. It is horrific how much force you could build up on just a decent sized little rock. It can absolutely fucking kill someone, like, very easily. And for halflings, they tend to rely on things like that, but they are surprisingly ugly in close combat because they fight dirty, and they will go for things like slashing your Achilles tendon and going for the big arteries in your leg. Halflings do not fuck around, and they fight dirty. They fight really dirty because they have to. And even when you're dealing with like some of their more elite units, like their elite cavalry units, probably one of the most famous halfling regiments of all time. Yeah, go ahead and say it.
Lumpenkrups fighting cocks.
Yeah, which you may go, ha, cocks, that's funny. They're actually fucking terrifying because they are roosters that are the size of like almost like a pony. Like, they're these giant fucking roosters. And if you've ever seen roosters fight or roosters dealing with other creatures of their size, roosters are mean motherfuckers. There's a reason that cockfighting is an illegal activity, because when roosters fight, it is horrible and bloody and vicious. And when you make roosters significantly larger, and there's also a little halfling riding on their back, wielding various forms of spears and other stuff, they are actually surprisingly deadly to like a human-sized target.
Well, for Lumpen, his group are archers. They have a weather vane as their banner. So the rooster, the fighting cock is the rooster on top of their banner.
What do they ride? They ride roosters, don't they?
Halflings do ride roosters in some of the fan lists, but for Lumpenkrups group, they are archers. They're infantry.
They're infantry. Oh, geez, I was confusing them with a completely different unit. Yes, they're very, very skilled archers. Oh, that's right, man. I completely got them mixed up with the Rooster Riders, which I don't think actually were an official unit, but I've seen minis of them. But I don't think they were official. I think they were fan made.
It's an awesome idea. I love the idea of these, essentially, dinosaurs, velociraptor type roosters that these things ride. These little guys ride. That'd be super fun.
I mean, I know I've seen them on a tabletop, but that was back in 2000 and I think it would have been like 2005, and I think they were just using fan rules. Yeah, so generally when you're seeing halflings being like threatening, like a threatening unit, it's most of the time in the actual tabletop, most of the time it's going to be it's going to be range stuff. So it's going to be things like the hot pot, which once again on the surface sounds very silly, of like you have halflings with basically a giant sling, like just a big catapult, like the thing that they pull back, and they load boiling soup in a big old metal case or a metal pot and pull it back, and then they let it go and it fires off, and God help you if you're in the vicinity when that thing lands. I think it was like a 3-inch template that did like strength 3. I can't remember if it ignored armor or if it just, it did ignore armor. Yeah, it was horrible. Like if you had a group of regular humans or elves, a halfling hot pot could absolutely obliterate like a unit of swordmasters. Like sitting there with their toughness 3 and their big armor, because it just ignored their armor and just eviscerated them.
All right, now hear me out. What if it's more like curry? So it's like super spicy. It gets in your eyes as well, and you're like, it's like a chemical weapon.
I mean, I feel like the boiling part has already got us covered on that, but like, sure, why not? Just make it like pepper spray mixed in with boiling water. I mean, that does sound awful, to be fair. That does sound like a horrible, horrible weapon to have thrown at you. But can the Badger Riders be honey badgers? They are. Yeah, they're the Badger Riders are from Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition, and they are absolutely horrifying because it talks about the way that they fight. Is the Badger Riders actually developed as a unit that specializes against large creatures like trolls and ogres? And the reason is because the Badgers are so fucking angry and fearless that they run forward and they like dodge an attack, and then they start clambering up the body of whoever it is they're attacking and are like ripping out chunks of their flesh with their claws and their teeth while running around and up their bodies, while the halfling is using their cleavers and swords to like aim for tendons or your throat or major arteries. So like the halflings are cutting away at you, they're hacking at you while this badger is running all over your body, just like biting and ripping at you. And they're horrifyingly effective creatures.
Do you want to hear the titles of the different levels of Badger Riders?
Oh yeah. The ranks, the tier ranks are really fun.
Yeah, the first rank is called the Badger Botherer.
The Botherer.
Yes. And then it goes to Badger Sergeant and then Badger Master. So
yeah. If you see a Badger Master, you better start fucking running, dude. You better start running. Matthew Adam Steele. There we go. Which city has the Halfling Godfather?
I can answer this. I know this one. So it's Bogenhoffen. There was a clan called Green Thistle that migrated there about 7 years prior to the current timeline of Warhammer I think Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay.
Mm-hmm.
And they opened up a meat pie shop as a front, but they secretly control the entire thieves guild of the city. Most locals believe it was wiped out, but in fact, Matchwick Green Thistle, who is the godfather you're asking about, he uses the pie sales to launder stolen goods, run pickpocketing, burglary, and smuggling operations. There is a common thing. We were talking about like how halflings art can be kind of dark. There's a common cultural touchstone with if you have a troublesome outsider in interfering with business, either in the Moot or with Green Thistle's group, they just tend to vanish, and then the halflings will make a lot of jokes about pies having a different type of meat. So for this guy, I would imagine that's a very common thing, kind of like Bricktop in snatch. You know, he just has a way of devouring his enemies.
Yep. So yeah, there you go. Let's see. We also have Pinkerton headcanon. Halflings are Warhammer Hungarians. They border Sylvania, Romania, subjects of the Empire, as in the Holy Roman Empire, live in a breadbasket region, related to ogres, which take a lot of inspiration from Eurasian nomads, unique language, love food, hot pot is full of halazel. Halazel? I'm probably butchering that. I don't know how to pronounce that. That there could be if you wanted to. So actually, okay, what I'll say here is halflings were not designed with any sort of inspiration from any kind of real world culture, because the halflings of Warhammer Fantasy were literally just Lord of the Rings. They were Tolkien's halflings, but parodied. If you wanted, I think, to take the halflings and try and develop for them much more serious cultural roots, and try and grab little bits and pieces from real world cultures to enhance and inspire certain elements of the halflings, this could be a reasonable way to approach it. I would always, as we say often on Lorebeards, I would always encourage y'all to probably not work with the ideology of like such and such group are such and such group from the real world, because it's never that. And that can also get you into trouble if you play your cards wrong. But Warhammer has never really leaned on anything that hard. But if you wanted to say, you know what, there are elements of the halflings that, in my own experience and knowledge of Hungarian cultures, there are some similarities that I think are interesting, and I'd really like to take some inspiration from Hungarian cultures and history and weave it into my interpretation of halflings. I think that's a kick-ass idea. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff you could do with that, and it would help the halflings get away from their, oh, look, we're Frodo Baggins if he swore a lot and porked everyone in the Fellowship of the Ring vibes. So I think there's a lot of really good stuff you could do with that. But I wouldn't word it quite like that. would be my advice.
That being said, I think halflings could make a hell of a goulash.
Oh yeah. I love goulash. The canon tier. In my Warhammer Fantasy roleplay house rules, halflings are excellent alchemists. The non-lazy ones anyway. Cooking bonus applies to brewing. Yeah, and it should. Halflings should be exceptional alchemists, because their senses are so much better developed for it. The halfling sense of like smell and taste and the properties that they would be able to have a good understanding of would be significantly more sophisticated than you would see from a human. Most humans, I think, would really struggle to keep up with a halfling. The only thing I think would be anywhere close to like the only advantage that I think humans would have over halflings in alchemy would be when you're dealing with alchemy of magic, like expressly magical forms of alchemy that you see in like the colleges of metal.
And also any ingredients on the top shelf.
Yeah, hey, that's what the residential ogre bodyguard is for. He's there just to grab things and to hand them down to you. Let's see. So from there, we've got Biofoot, who halflings are juggalos. They rock the dark carnival. Sure, why not? I don't. Why not? Excellent, great, cool.
Halflings, how do they work?
Brock 6000, ancient halfling chant. Ravioli, ravioli, give me the formuloi. Ah, yes. Chef Boyardee, an ancient, well-revered chieftain among the halflings.
I'm shocked that Games Workshop hasn't already done that name somewhere.
Maybe it's too much of an American thing. Maybe Chef Boyardee is too American of a brand.
Yeah, probably.
You're right. He should have been like one of the great elders of the Moot. Chef Boyardee, who successfully defeated a vampire count during the Vampire Wars or something.
Lumpen Croup is said to have done that.
And yeah, I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. Lumpen Croup was a genuine badass. Like, Lumpen Croup and the Fighting Cocks, their whole gimmick is like, oh, look how silly they are. And then, like, their actual story is that they have, like, brutally massacred several great enemies of the Moon, and they are a very successful mercenary regiment. Lycor Gaming. Not sure how long halflings have been around the setting, but have they ever had a major encounter with Gorbad Ironclaw or Gothor the Beast Lord? Gorbad, yes, and it did not go well for them. Gorbad Ironclaw's Wa, as it came up into the Empire, it utterly devastated. Obviously it destroyed the electoral province of Sudenland, but it also absolutely ravaged Stirland and Averland and the Moot, and like pretty much the entire Southern Empire, leading up to the Battle of Altdorf. Gorbad was kind of unstoppable up until that point, and the Moot suffered horrifically at the hands of Gorbad. It's one of those scenarios where it's actually very unclear how exactly the halflings survived, because Gorbad's invasion was so massive. Grum the Punch also, I believe, passed through the Moot, but their invasions were so big. But Gorbad was not a particularly swift invasion, and it's kind of a miracle the halflings survived it. But they did try to help fight. It didn't go well for them at all. Halflings tend to have, unfortunately, a very, very poor track record when it comes to fighting against other factions within the lore, which is a bit of a bummer in my opinion. I would say that it would make the setting much more interesting to have the halflings actually quite capable of defending the Moot and allowing them to showcase how they defend themselves through unusual tactics and desperate means and desperate measures, in addition to their partnerships with humanity and the dwarfs, who they work with both of those cultures significantly often. But every time a Black Library author tends to even get a whiff of halfling in like a major battle setting, they are basically just treated as like an army of children that get massacred.
Yeah. Fun fact: the most one-sided slaughter in Imperial history was by Marius Leitdorf against the Moot, where the halflings broke almost immediately.
Fucking Leitdorf did massacre a ton of halflings. Leitdorf hated halflings. He does not like halflings.
Yeah, the Battle of Nearstream is, if you want to look it up.
Yeah, Leitdorf out there starting wars with everyone around him. That crazy bastard. He was a genius, but he was just an absolute bastard. Skylar Martin. Do halflings serve in more traditional roles as state troops? Also, can they use magic? They cannot use magic. There's no in the modern setting, there is no such thing as a halfling wizard. They like flat out not possible. Unless you wanted to make one that could, which would be a yes but no scenario, as we classically say here on Lorebeards. But do they serve in more traditional roles as state troops? What halflings excel out is as scouts. When halflings are often, when they're being treated more seriously and they show up for a battle alongside the Empire's armies, they tend to be scout specialists, because halflings are very, as you might expect, halflings are extremely good at moving unseen. And getting places and scouting out enemy positions without being detected, which is incredibly invaluable in the Warhammer Fantasy setting. Like having scouts that can reliably get like info on the enemy army and then fall back to your position, report back. Or something halflings could actually be very, very good at is, you sending them out as your field wardens or lumpen fighting cocks or various ranged regiments that are stealthy enough that they're able to get behind enemy lines and then either start shooting them from behind or like take out their war machines and stuff like that.
There is some lore to say that it's really bizarre. It's one of the strangest bits of lore I found on halflings. But apparently magic just sort of happens to them, even though they can't use it. Like, they're not magical, but magic items just seem to continually appear. Like cursed rings in fields, forgotten weapons in cellars, even dark artifacts can end up being used for petty domestic nonsense instead of grand corruption to the halflings. They just, apparently the Moot has like a lot of weird little magical items running around. So
oh yeah, well, I would bet a lot of that is probably some sticky-fingered halflings that went off somewhere, grabbed some stuff, brought it back, and then just kind of forgot about it and left it around because halflings are that goofy sometimes.
I'm shocked, sir. Shocked you.
Yeah, accusing the halflings. Yeah, I can't. You skipped Gothor. So yeah, Gothor did not go that far south. Gothor came out of the Dreckwald forest and absolutely obliterated the Dreckwald, and then he made his way east until he hit Hawkland. And in Hawkland, he made Gothor's like great finale was when he hits the city of Hergig, which is the capital, and there he fights the Elector Count of Hawkland, who was a absolute evil motherfucker, and the two of them kill each other. So Gothor's rampage was notable. He devastated the Dreckwald province, a lot of Middenheim or Midland, and then but he was stopped in Hawkland, so he didn't get down towards the Moot. Let's see here. The Calendar again. Thank you very much. The Moot is alive and with the sounds of banjos and Alabama accents. Yes, though probably with a better education system. Anyway.
Damn.
Yeah, I went there. Halflings with banjos to me feels incredibly appropriate. I would be upset if I saw halflings that didn't have banjos. They should have them. Because that I can't think of an instrument that would be more fitting of a halfling than that. Lycor Gaming reminds me of Leprechaun. Oh, the Leprechaun movies. Oh my, those movies. For anyone that doesn't indulge, there's a whole gimmick on YouTube Shorts where there's like a YouTube Shorts culture where if you're just like idly going through YouTube Shorts without thinking very hard because you're like trying to fall asleep or whatever. There will always be some random ass movie that is being pushed to the fore because there's like YouTube channels that will chop up movies into nothing but shorts and then upload them all. And so some channel will be getting the algorithm's attention. And so you'll just start seeing a ton of clips from a movie. And literally like, I think like 3 weeks ago for me, I was going through and it was the goddamn Leprechaun in the Hood movie. And it was like, oh, this is so terrible. This is such a bad film.
At least it wasn't the one in space.
Yeah, it's true. It wasn't Leprechaun in space. That is true. That would be the Leprechaun from those movies is much more likely to be a Warhammer gnome. A Warhammer gnome would be much more similar to that particular character in that it's a wizard that is like a capricious little asshole who's actually very, 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 very dangerous. They made more than one. Oh, dude, there's like 7. Like there's like a shitload of Leprechaun movies. Warwick Davis, like that was like his thing for years, was playing Leprechaun.
His post Star Wars career was all Leprechaun all the time.
Yeah, I think that's what he did until Harry Potter. It's just the Leprechaun pretty much nonstop. Let's see. Super Orlok. The Green Thistle Pie Shop is really blooming after that gloomy halfling barber set up shop in its attic. Dude, oh man, I would love a Sweeney Todd halfling. That would be amazing if there was a halfling barber surgeon who was killing people to be made into meat pies. I would love that. That would be such a good. That would be great.
It's so Warhammer. It's such a great reference. Yeah, I'm 100% behind that too.
Yeah, just a moody little halfling with black hair with a big white streak who just sings about how much Altdorf is just the worst city on earth. How much he fucking hates Altdorf and everyone in it. There are 2 Leprechaun in the Hood movies. Oh my god, they made 2 of those.
Jesus.
Hey man, that means it was successful enough to make a second one. Let's all just keep that in mind.
Right?
Oh my gosh. Elemental exposure. Would halfling clans be matrilineal given that keeping track of one's pork piles has been hazy? Yes, they are.
They're definitely matrilineal. Yeah.
The vast majority of halfling clans are matriarchies. The current elder, though this actually flip-flopped a little bit, but it finally settled, that the current elector count of the Moot, Hisby Stoutheart, is a woman. And the very, very first elector count of the Moot was a woman who was also like less than a day old. Because the halflings found a loophole. So how the halflings even got their elector count? Actually, no. Was it the way they got their first elector? I think it was the way they got their first elector count. Was Ludwig the Fat granted them the status, and then, but in order to they tried to kind of hoodwink the halflings, and basically there was a rule where the elector count had to be someone that was like impossibly young, like born under a really ridiculous set of circumstances. And the halflings basically like speed ran having a baby and getting her to right. Yeah, did you look at the specifics?
Yeah. So imperial law said that the elector must be born within the county, and because the county was so new.
That's right. They made the Moot an electoral. It's not a province per se, but it's like a recognized space. So they're like, you can't have an elector count unless they're born in the Moot. And the halflings were like, bet.
Yeah. And the goal was to, the hope was that the halflings would not be able to present a suitable candidate in time and thus lose their votes for the elector counts. And this of course backfired. This, as you described, they ended up with a baby as the elector count.
Yeah, so yeah, the youngest elector count in history is a literal baby that was like several days old. Because halflings are just goats like that. And that's what the Empire got for trying to hoodwink them. No, Hisme, Hisme. That's so good. The Tale of Teeny Todd. That is spectacular.
Hilarious.
That is so good.
Well done, Jaunty Scarecrow.
A+. That is A+++++. That is absolutely what that should be called.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's so fucking good.
Teeny Todd, indeed.
Teeny Todd. Hannah. I took creative liberties to run the enemy within in 2502, and Leekdorf's attack on the Moot is a huge plot point. The slaughter is Imperial propaganda. Ooh, that's spicy. I actually like that a lot. Yeah, especially if you're going to have halfling characters involved, that should be a notable part. Plus, a significant amount of the enemy within takes you like relatively close to the Moot. So like if you have halfling characters, it's one of those events you should absolutely be dealing with the repercussions of as a GM if you have halflings among your PCs, because that's something that should affect them deeply and affect how they feel about the Empire. But that's awesome, Hannah. That's cool.
Oh, I was going to bring up something about the matrilineal thing.
Yeah, please do.
It's kind of a meme, but the community generally sees these as the halfling women are the real clan leaders. They're the land dealers, they're the organizers, and the males are kind of just play around at being carefree layabouts as long as the food keeps coming. But obviously this is reversed when in times of war, because it's the men who are doing the fighting. So I just thought that was interesting that the community seems to have embraced the idea that, yeah, the men are basically just there for fighting and screwing.
Just laying about. Ricky Chapman, in a Black Library book about the Strigony, there were a mercenary company of halflings. They were defeated when a murder of crows attacked them and got distracted by the fresh bird meat and left. Yeah, that's not a very positive portrayal, I would say. That sounds about right. Sometimes they make for reliable allies, but sometimes you get this scenario when they get distracted by fresh food and they're like, okay, we got what we wanted, let's piss off. That's almost more ogre than anything. That's so derogatory to the halfling mercenaries. How could they do that? That's so mean. Also, Ricky Tatman, I'm surprised you haven't hit us with some great halfling story yet, though it's very possible it's still coming. Mornington Crescent, can halflings use miracles or blessing magic? No. Halflings have a very notable relationship when it comes to the gods. Halflings are I wouldn't call them atheistic by any means, because they have their own faith, but they have a much more the gods are the gods kind of are doing their own thing. We're kind of doing our own thing. The halflings don't have temples. They don't have much in the way of priests. To them, they acknowledge the gods as individuals that are great progenitors of their species, who set up a lot of the cultural rules that they follow. They're almost more akin to the dwarf ancestor gods than they are to traditional human gods.
Halflings are more superstitious than religious.
Yes.
They do have small shrines to their gods, but they have no grand temples at all unless humans build them.
Yeah, and now the funny thing about halflings, an aspect of that quote unquote superstition, is that halflings, part of what allows them to ingratiate themselves very easily to other cultures is that when halflings show up in an area and someone tells them about a superstition or about a local god. So they're oh, you're traveling the river Bogen? Well, then to appease Father Bogen, the god of the river, you need to make sure to dump certain kinds of food, throw certain kinds of food into the river to appease him. Or when you go out to sea, you need to make an offering to Manon in order to ward off storms and make sure that he's in a good mood. Or when you pass through this forest, you have to do this other kind of little ritual to make sure the god's happy. The halflings take all that shit really seriously. If there's a little, they don't really care about the god in the sense that they're not really interested in worshiping the god, but the halflings very much live by a lifestyle of, I'm not going to take any risks. If there's a superstition about, hey, when you enter this forest, you got to hop on one leg for 300 yards to make sure you don't piss off the god, the halfling's all right.
There's a saying in halfling culture regarding worship and philosophy and things like that. And the saying is, deep thoughts, butter, no parsnips.
Yeah, which basically breaks down to not worth.
Now, they do have a very notable religious celebration, a festival.
Oh, yeah. The halflings have a ton of holidays.
No, but they have one that's very important.
Yes.
You know the name of it?
Yeah, Pie Week.
It's Pie Week. It's their goddess Esmeralda, the goddess of hearth and home, is the one that celebrates this, and they have a whole week, which is, guess what? Baking and eating pies.
Yes, which has led to like conflicts. The Pie Wars revolve around Pie Week.
Indeed.
They're basically religious wars, or the closest thing that the halflings have to them. Yeah, good old.
Well,
silly nonsense.
I mean, some of them use lard in the pie crust, and others use butter in the pie crust, and this must not be allowed.
Yeah, that's on a base. When you say it just like out of pocket, it sounds like, oh well, that's just like kind of stupid, frivolous nonsense. But if you think about some of the things that in real world humanity has inflicted violence over because of like differences in how certain religious things should be observed, it's not that ridiculous of a concept that having different opinions on how something should be, something sacred, something culturally significant should be handled, that differences of opinion could lead to outright violence and people taking sides and it resulting in death, and then people seeking revenge, which leads to more death, and it leads to family feuds that last for many, many, many years. It's actually not that ridiculous, like, at all. In the slightest. Like, it's like, oh, like, yeah, the Pie War sounds stupid, but like when you really break it down, it's like, there have been people that have died for more stupid shit in our world than that.
There is also there is a strange little birthday custom in the town of Werden, which involves making a straw man halfling effigy stuffed with sweets, which children beat to get back stolen candy. Basically a piñata-like tradition. And the locals of Werden, they insist that no actual halfling has ever been used for this.
Yeah, which that insistence is very suspicious. Skylar Martin, Teeny Todd. I have sailed the world, beheld its wonders. The cruelty of men is as wondrous as Cathay, but there's no place like Altdorf. Oh, I'm trying to remember. It's like it's a dark pit full of people that are full of shit, or however that story goes. Oh my god, I love Teeny Todd. That to me, Teeny Todd is 100% canonical character. Buffett, damn, we're running out of super chats. Dwarf Fort. Well, listen, I appreciate all of the super chats. We really appreciate all the support and all that stuff. But like, don't worry, we can handle it. And then like, we're always happy to grab out regular ones as well. One of the things, though, that's actually worth jumping off of when it comes to the like religious discussions and all that aspect we were having earlier, is that something that I find particularly amusing, but it actually is kind of horrifying, even though it's a parody, is that the halflings, despite everything we've talked about them, of that they're like fairly resistant to chaos, and they have these very family-based cultures and all this stuff, they do of course have their darker sides. And when you're dealing with superstitions, the halflings do have some darker superstitions. There is very literally a Children of the Corn incident in the halflings that occurs on a regular basis, which is that there is a part of the Moot that is known for having the highest quality tobacco and other crops among the Moot. And the secret supposedly behind it is that there is basically a god of the fields. So there's a spirit, there's an entity who is a deity or a deity-like creature that the halflings know about. And supposedly the halflings make offerings to this god every once in a while in order to satiate its desires, and in exchange it gives them bountiful harvests. So there's a whole thing that when people are traveling through the Moot and they come to this part of the Moot, which is like has the best quality tobacco in the world, so it's a place that a lot of people want to visit. People that the halflings that live there think won't be missed mysteriously disappear because they are quite literally captured by the halflings, and then they are taken out. They are secreted out to these fields, and they are brutally murdered and sacrificed to feed the hunger of this terrible god that then rewards them with ever delicious and great harvests.
Yeah, it usually takes place in like the autumn equinox, and it usually involves a secluded barn and anybody that they might consider, no big loss, vagrants, criminals, outsiders. Over time, the practice can expand and can become notorious for disappearing of, other folk, like other halflings or even big, humans that might be visiting the area. But, they have really prosperous tobacco and crop fields. So
worth. Hawk, I went to middle school with one of the kids that was Children of the Corn. Oh, I guess a remake, because the original Children of the Corn, I don't think you would have been in middle school at the same time in them. That was a black and white film, I think.
No, it was not black and white, but he'd have to be my age.
Oh yeah, but I think they've done a number of remakes.
Oh, there's like 14 Children of the Corn movies.
Oh, there you go. The commentary in real life, different denominations, presumably Christianity, killed over the type of wafers used in the communion. Pie Week, serious business. Yeah, there you go.
Well, Pie Week it started out very religious, but it's kind of grown.
It's been Christmasified.
Right. Yeah. I was going to compare it to Halloween, but yeah, fair enough. It's more about gluttony than anything else. Like, it's supposedly about Esmeralda, but it's really about like how much pie can you eat.
No, yeah, food eating contests are like a popular gimmick that can bring a whole lot of pride. But time for the module War on Pie Week. That could genuinely make such a fun like little one-shot module of like a group of PCs that are like, we're here for Pie Week, this is gonna be so fun, and like a fucking religious war breaks out.
I would write that. I would absolutely write that.
Oh, that could be actually a spectacular amount of fun. I would not say no to that at all in the slightest. But from there, halflings, at the end of the day, there are a lot of different. I am suddenly feeling surprisingly unwell.
Are you okay? Do you need to step away for a bit, or?
I might here in just a little bit, but I think I could get through kind of like a final thoughts sort of thing.
Okay.
But I'm still recovering from some troubles, but I'm feeling more nauseous than anything at the moment. In any event, ultimately, when you're dealing with the halflings, you have a race or a species that their ultimate foundation is very, very simple, which is that they were quite literally someone looked over at Tolkien's hobbits and decided to make them into a ridiculous parody of everything that Tolkien made them as, like these wonderful, perfect little people of the fields that are a beautiful embodiment of what it means to be a content Englishman out in the village, just enjoying tea and living day-to-day calm life that then gets interrupted by the horrors of industry and war and all that other stuff. And Warhammer took that and flipped it on its head to somewhat make it arguably a darker, but in some places of the world, potentially more realistic portrayal of, oh yeah, they live out in the boonies, but they're also they have strong senses of community, but that causes a lot of extreme cultural clashes with other folks that are from big people lands. But in some ways, I think Warhammer, surprisingly, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, did a better job of making the halflings feel like they're actually a different species. And they have extremely unique cultural norms that make them difficult to live with when you're dealing with like humans. That for most of us, if you put a halfling in your house, you would probably find them incredibly difficult to tolerate until you got to know them well enough and they got to know you well enough that they could respect your boundaries, of which hopefully they would, and you could understand how they tick, because they wouldn't be like you. They're not a human. They're not just like the perfect human, just these small little content folk. They are very complex creatures that are driven by what we would consider to be extremes of gluttony, lust, and don't seem to have much in the way of a good concept of personal ownership. Which, as someone that has had to deal with like people wandering off with your shampoo bottle, would cause violence when there are places I need to be, things I need to do. But as Warhammer has developed, the halflings almost entirely, I would say, thanks to the roleplay game, have evolved more and more and more into being less of a joke and more of a genuinely fascinating species, to the point where in the year of our Lord 2026, there are many, many people who are desperately hoping to see them return into what the core of Warhammer is, which are ultimately the battle games, whether that be Total War or Warhammer the Old World or even Age of Sigmar. Of that, the halflings represent such a uniquely fun, goofy idea. Like, you know, you can see in Blood Bowl their very cartoonish, over-the-top, goofy aspect, where they were deliberately designed as the worst Blood Bowl team in OG Blood Bowl. Like, you didn't play halflings unless you had fun losing, because that's what they were there to do, to lose. It was only the most recent current edition of Blood Bowl that halflings actually got made possible to reliably win with. And even then, they're not great. They're just better than they were. But halflings are a species I actually have very, very high hopes for. As Warhammer has started to be taken much more seriously, I think a lot in parts thanks to things like Total War. And as we continue to advance into the future and we see things that I thought would never have been possible, like the Tiger Warriors actually arriving into the setting, it gives me genuine hope that this might result in Games Workshop maybe taking a fresh look at the halflings and taking them seriously instead of just seeing them as little bastard sister fuckers. We can only hope.
Pie eating.
We can only hope. Yeah, pie eating. Yeah, there we go. Anything you want to add on there, Ross?
Oh yeah, I got some really interesting fan theories that I wanted to ask you about, because I think some of these are really cool. And one of the ones I like a lot is that the idea is that the halflings are deliberately performing the role of these simple, happy bumpkins as social camouflage. That in reality, they're very observant, good at reading people, and know exactly what they're doing when they play dumb to avoid being conscripted or any kind of imperial responsibility that falls on, you know, your typical humans. I like that a lot. And
I would say that is probably, if not strongly canonical, borderline. Because I mean, one of the big things with halflings and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is that their fellowship stat is insanely high. Like, fellowship is their like plus 40 stat, which is a lot. Like, they know how to read people.
Right. And this goes along with the idea that in the Moot, basically gossip is like an information network. The halfling gossip is
that's fun.
Like a semi-formal intelligence system, because the cooks, the servants, the innkeepers, they hear everything. And I mean, not just in the Moot, but like in the surrounding areas where they can, you know, get that information into the Moot to the elector count if necessary. They even trade, according to some lore, they trade juicy bits of gossip like currency, and they can spread or kill rumors across provinces just by existing. Basically, like they have it is an unofficial spy network within the empire.
Yeah, that actually would check really, really well. They're like borderline, or they are gossip mongers. Halflings very much have a culture that's very heavily built around talking, which actually would probably lean itself very heavily to the idea that halflings can speak in code, but the way that they do so is so obscenely wordy and full of just a bunch of other nonsense as they're rambling about their second cousin's wife's daughter's thing that they were up to. But it also includes like a bizarrely coded message about the fact that they've discovered like one of the elector counts is cheating on his wife, or that there's been rumors of like some kind of dark magic or cult that's been manipulating events over there. I would love so much for there to be a whole thing about a chaos cult, or like the Lamian bloodline, the Sisterhood of Lamia, being thwarted by gossiping halflings. That would be absolutely fantastic.
Oh yeah, that would be a great short story. I'd dig that a lot.
Because the thing that you could do with that, I think, is, I'm not gifted enough to do this, but I think if you had a really gifted writer, I think the thing about that would be really fun is you could leave it very deliberately vague on whether the halflings did it intentionally or not.
Exactly.
Of like, did they do it on purpose, or are they just such blabbermouths that they accidentally caused a series of events that led to this cult or this vampire being exposed?
There's another fan theory I think you'd really get a kick out of. It's that the Moot is actually a very underrated economic powerhouse in the Empire. That the Moot essentially feeds the Empire, dominates catering, innkeeping, and tobacco. And this soft power may mean that half the elector counts could be in serious trouble if the Moot ever decided to stop exporting goods.
I mean, I would pretty significantly agree with that. Of that, the Moot is considered, I think, the ultimate breadbasket, which is why there have been like genuine times of violence between the Moot, Averland, and Stirland, where Averland and Stirland have desired to absorb the Moot because of the significant amount of wealth and political influence that they could obtain by doing so. I think the Moot would probably have an incredible amount of soft power.
Well, going along with that is that the idea that the information gathering, the asymmetric warfare, the economic powerhouse, that the halflings are the true power behind the throne, the true shadow, if you will, because they've weaponized their hospitality. All of their they don't use swords. They use pies, and they trade information with them. They use them as bribes in little picnic hampers. They can ruin a noble's reputation by just forgetting how to cook at his court. Yes. Oh no, I've ruined the roast, for your big
bombing the state dinner.
Yeah, so it's like they're fixers and spy masters and just like these little disruptors that could nudge imperial culture at a number of different pain points if they really wanted to.
Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of strength behind that theory. I definitely think that's something that if you're considering running like a halfling PC, you could absolutely run really, really strongly with, of that halflings spies in particular, or halflings that significantly influence major events through playing the fool, or through messing with things that people just have grown too accustomed to allowing halflings to do. I mean, think about how you could have a halfling that could absolutely devastate some kind of operation by so many people, like say in Altdorf or other cities, rely on halfling food stalls of like, over on like various districts, of getting like halfling pies or halfling meat pies or various halfling food that they're selling, and the halfling could very easily poison that food. Like they could assassinate people very easily, and no one would think anything of it. They just think that's what you get for eating from a dodgy Altdorf stall, instead of realizing that it's like a deliberate assassination attempt.
And it was probably like a super delicious stall too.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it was amazing. Like
the best street food in Altdorf. Okay, here's one that I think I know I really was like raised my eyebrows at it, but I love the concept. The Moots could be seen as neutral ground because of the lighthearted, non-threatening image of the halflings. So you could treat the Moot as some sort of unofficial diplomatic zone where rival factions, merchant guilds, even elves or dwarves could meet with less fear of assassination, because nobody wants to be remembered as the guy who spilled blood at a halfling picnic.
I would say that's certain. I can see that being a thing for the Empire. I feel like for the dwarves and elves, that would probably be a non-starter. But I feel like for humanity, there's some potential there, especially because a lot of people, and granted, I very heavily lay this at the feet of Games Workshop's army book writers, because they like to forget this all the time. But the Moot actually would have a very significant military force because there are so many ogres. There's so many ogres that live in the Moot because they enjoy living with the Halflings, and the Halflings actually have a much easier time placating and feeding them than most people do. This is actually one of the few. This is actually something that there's a short story about Goldfag Maneater that talks about him. It basically follows a story of when he left his tribe and sort of grew to greatness. And part of that revolves around Goldfag Maneater ended up getting a job as a bodyguard for the Moot. And he led like this huge ogre contingent that defended it to the point that when another ogre tribe came to the Moot and their goal was to like eat all the Halflings, the second they walked in, they found Goldfag Maneater waiting for them with a bunch of other ogres who then absolutely annihilated them. Which is something that is very forgotten when you're dealing with the stories of like Gorbad Ironclaw and Grom the Paunch and all this other stuff, of that the Moot more realistically would have been a place that would have been avoided probably because the standing army there would have been absolutely fucking vicious.
Well, there's a great theory that the Empire seriously underestimates how many archers the Moot could field, because most of them are doubling as farmers or drovers or cooks. And, you know, if they were called up as a militia en masse, you could have I imagine that there would be some electric counts that would be shocked at just how many Halflings showed up.
yeah, because man, they breed like rabbits. They really do. And they can live for surprisingly long time too. Like Halflings dying of old age, Halflings can easily make it over 100. Easily.
Not for nothing, but Samwise and Rose had like 13 kids.
Oh yeah, and that's probably like rookie numbers by Warhammer standards to be correct. The Callantir, imagine Vermintide, but with hungry Halflings coming out of the walls. You know, when I started that sentence, I thought you were about to say like, oh, imagine like a really cool Halfling PC in Vermintide. Wouldn't that be like a super fun new character? But nope, that took like a Poppy Playtime horror angle that I was not expecting. Halflings, they're coming out of the walls. Yeah, I would not want to be eaten alive by Halflings. Dosix, could a Halfling become a mob butcher and do magic? So okay, this is going to be one of those classic Lorebeard answers of no, but yes. There is nothing in the current established canon that suggests you could do this. However, you are dealing with a god who specializes in imprinting itself on the psyche and seemingly souls of groups that get too close to it, to the point that even Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon, the dragon of the West in Grand Cathay, who is one of the most powerful creatures in the world, like he's in the top 100-ish area at least, he is starting to be driven mad and losing his mind because of the influence of the Great Maw, because it's gotten into him. Like it's affecting him deeply. And the Great Maw is not chaos. It is its own thing. And the idea that a Halfling could become influenced by the Great Maw, and that by doing so that unlocks the ability for them to use magic, I would say that is very possible. It would probably be extremely unlikely, but I think that is something that could theoretically happen.
You know, I realized I left out a few of their military units. I left out the poultry swarms.
Poultry swarms?
Yes, I left out the poultry swarms and sheepdog swarms, which they both had both of those. Some of the fan.
That's such a goofy ass sheepdog swarms. I feel like sheepdogs are too big to be a swarm unit. That would just be a war dog unit. Well, whoever made that unit is a goofball.
Well, I mean, so is poultry.
I mean, at least like a poultry swarm, I could envision it. I'm not saying it'd be effective, but I could envision it.
I mean, have you ever been swarmed by fowl?
I mean, honestly, I've seen. I imagine that would be horrible. Chickens and stuff, like roosters and stuff, do have some horrifically sharp claws. I would not want to be swarmed by like a rabid thing of them. They probably would be like strength 2, unable to do anything about armor. But if you were some unarmored Empire spearman, it would probably have a chance of killing you.
Some of the stranger stuff meant that they could ride baby dragons, which they described as ickle, being very soft scaled and playful.
That one, I would probably draw the line before that one. I'm going to be honest. That one might be a little too. Yeah, it might be a little far.
Well, yeah. I mean, I agree. I do like the poultry swarm though.
Yeah, I do. Skara, Prince of the Parade. How many Scaven slaves to beat a single decent halfling? A singular decent halfling could probably take on a surprising amount of Scaven slaves. There's actually in Total War Warhammer, actually, there's a loading screen quote by a halfling Skaven hunter where he talks about that a clan rat, not a Skaven slave, but a clan rat, you can actually pretty reliably, even a halfling, if you like position yourself correctly, you can snap their necks rather reliably, because the Skaven are so underfed and wiry that they're weaker than they initially appear. But if you were doing like a traditional soldier halfling, like a field warden, I would say he could probably reliably take on maybe like 2 or 3 Skaven slaves before he would get overwhelmed.
Well, there's a named character, Fastbinder the Strong, who is described as an unusually strong halfling, and he was captured by the Skaven, but somehow managed to crawl out alive from the mines of Skaven Blight. He got out of Skaven Blight.
That's so fucking baller. Like that is a scary ass fucking halfling to get enslaved, taken into the tunnels beneath Skaven Blight, and he escaped. That is probably the scariest fucking halfling like ever.
I think that quote is from him.
It could be. It could be. It could be him.
He was in the mines for 10 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think there is definitely a quote about him. I can't remember if he's the one that says that other particular quote, but yeah, there's halflings are much more reliable, funny enough, soldiers than Skaven slaves, unless you're trying to use them like you do Skaven slaves, where Skaven slaves are literally just meant to be a meat shield. They're just a wave of bodies to try and exhaust the enemy and use up all their ammunition. Ricky Chapman, if you want a halfling tale, okay. In our Chaos campaign, we had to kidnap some halflings to secure an alliance with some ogre tribes. We would have succeeded. Oh no. If the Silliness worshiper PC didn't enjoy the Moot's food and culture to the point that she threatened to kill anyone who harmed her new halfling pets. That's very funny.
Well, that's the real anti-chaos right there.
Yeah, really. I like that. I know this isn't where you're going with this, but I love the implied story that their food is so good that they like redeemed a Slaanesh Chaos champion. Like they pulled them back over to the side of good because their meats were so succulent. Skara, now how many halflings to kill Be'lakor? Listen, they just need one good-sized rock. That's what tic-tac-toe taught us. Is that Be'lakor can be killed by a singular rock if it's placed well enough. I don't think halflings would have a realistic chance to kill Be'lakor. If he's being treated with any kind of appropriateness. Be'lakor would, I think they might be able to lure him into a trap. I think they could definitely, if the halflings were able to take advantage of Be'lakor's arrogance, which is definitely a problem Be'lakor has, and they were able to lure him into a scenario where they could like literally drop a like unleash like a flood or some other great like a big rock fall or something that could crush or destroy him. By just overwhelming him with a sheer amount of force, I think they could create a plan that would result in his death. because he would underestimate them so grotesquely. Or like one of them has an artifact that's like a Hail Mary type thing. But I don't think there would be like a number of halflings you could put in a room without any sort of deep plan or like any of that other stuff that would have any really realistic chance of killing him.
Okay, hear me out. A, Storm of Chaos timeline.
Okay.
And B, it turns out Bellicor is actually allergic to curry.
Yeah. It could be that Bellicor is like, Bellicor in truth is just like a hardcore white boy that has no spice tolerance. And the halflings just they hit him with the spicy curry so bad it just fucking kills him. Just sends him. Yeah, his throat just swells up and he dies.
The Scoville rating is too high.
Yeah, it was too high. They took him out. They just took him out with some very carefully. They slingshotted a pepper in his mouth and he just fucking chokes and dies. There you go.
I mean, you got to admit that's very Storm of Chaos.
Yeah, that would be on par with how Bellicor has died to other people. Like that would be a way I could see him being killed. Biofoot, we need a halfling slayer character. Could they? You could have a halfling that is incredibly brutal and violent and has turned his back on many aspects of halfling culture to the point that he's a loner. It would probably be a grotesquely depressing story, even more so than with a dwarf. And it would probably be a very, very nasty individual. For there to be a halfling that is so fucked up that he has lost his sense of community, his or her sense of community from the rest of the halflings, you would have to be dealing with probably the most evil motherfucking halfling on the face of the earth. Like that halfling would have had to do something impossibly horrible that halflings are like, no.
I read that very differently. So in dwarf culture, you know, when you're a slayer of a certain type, they call you like a troll slayer.
Oh,
you demon slayer.
Do you mean someone that is known as the halfling slayer?
That's how I read it. I read it.
I hope not.
I read it as a slayer whose deed is, you know, he kills halflings.
I mean, that would be an incredibly fucked up dwarf. But I suppose if that dwarf, like his shame originated from some halfling, you could have a. I feel like you wouldn't be called the halfling slayer. You'd be the halfling serial killer. At that point. Yeah, there is a Gotrek and Felix book that is, or not book, but short story. There is a Gotrek and Felix short story that's basically the halfling lair. Because there's a short story where Gotrek, in order to get something that he wants, I can't remember if it's just lots of beer or if it's like a piece of gold or something. Gotrek basically arranges a marriage between Felix and a halfling in exchange for some goofy item. And it's a whole fucking goofy saga about Gotrek and Felix pissing off the halfling clans and having to like get out of there. But there have been some notably dangerous halflings in the Gotrek and Felix stories. If you actually read the book Manslayer, which is like book 8 or something of the Gotrek and Felix saga, it was the last book actually that William King wrote for Gotrek and Felix. It was his or did Bill King write Manslayer, or was that, I want to say he wrote Manslayer, but that might have been Nathan Long.
It's Nathan Long. It's Long.
Oh, that was Nathan Long. Okay. So Nathan Long wrote Manslayer, and in Manslayer there is a halfling criminal who is actually like a devastating big bad of that book. Like he's a genuine threat to Gotrek and Felix. Because he's just that fucking, not necessarily in combat, but just like through his nature and his schemes and everything, he's like a genuinely very dangerous character.
We should also point out there's Vito. Now, Vito is a character from Zavant, which is like the Sherlock Holmes book. And Vito is essentially Watson to Zavant's Sherlock. So he's a very little, very streetwise little halfling that hangs out with Zavant to help him solve crimes.
Like Danny DeVito? Yeah, sure.
I mean, that's one way to think of it.
Maybe he's a halfling that just looks exactly like Danny DeVito. Danny DeVito, especially his character from like Sunny in Philadelphia, would make an excellent halfling. That is almost a perfect representation of like why halflings are detested by a lot of people in the Empire, because they're like that level of unhinged sometimes.
So then I started blasting.
Yeah, so then I started blasting. Biofoot, I meant a halfling who is a slayer. Okay, I interpreted it correctly.
Sorry, Biofoot. I went a different direction.
Yeah, Ross manifested the most horrible serial killer the doll we have ever produced. That would be such a horrible character. Oh my god. Scarra, theoretically, how many halflings to overwhelm Khorne? All of them. You just have to. Khorne doesn't like unworthy skulls, and I think from Khorne's perspective, there are a few things as unworthy as a halfling. So if you just drown him in halfling skulls, maybe he'll choke on them and die. Maybe you could just absolutely just overwhelm him. Or like you make the Skull of Thrones, you fill it with so many halfling skulls that like it starts to tilt because the halfling skulls can't support the weight because they're so small and brittle, and he falls to his death when the skull throne collapses overside. All right. I think for me, I've got a headache that is just growing steadily worse. So I think I'm going to unfortunately have to bow out at this point and go take some pills. But Ross, feel free to, if you'd like to wrap it up, or if you want to just do like kind of a Q&A and just chat about halflings for another 30 minutes, you can do that as well, whatever suits your boat. But yeah, for some reason I've got quite a bit of a migraine coming on, so I'm gonna go take something.
I'm really sorry to hear that. Go lay down in somewhere dark.
Yeah, thank you, sir, and thanks for joining me. I appreciate you filling in for Andy and coming to have a fun little chat. This was fun. This is just fun. They're so goofy.
They certainly are.
All right, thanks, man, and I will see you guys soon. Take care.
Cool.
Bye, guys.
I will continue the stream, so if anybody wants to hang around,
Great.
I will be here.
Then please hang out with Ross and bombard him with questions. The more ridiculous, the better. Yes. I will see you guys soon. Bye.
Oops. Trying to figure out the best way to put my picture up here. You know what? It might just be this, with the Lorebeards up there in the corner. There we go. So yeah, halflings. Super fun, super great. I love the fan-made army lists, and I've always enjoyed seeing things like the half tank with the soup cannon, which is just crazy. And I love the idea too that vampires just consider them like to taste unpleasant. Canonically they are more resistant to vampirism, which is good because you don't really want to see a whole bunch of tiny vampires running around. At least I don't think anybody would want to see that. But yeah, let's I'm happy to take questions on 40K, on halflings in Warhammer, on anything from the RPG channel as well. I don't have the same encyclopedic knowledge of Warhammer Fantasy like Loremaster of Sotek, but I have worked on several Warhammer Fantasy projects, and I'm pretty good at it, just not as good as he is. So I love this one. Prince of the Parade says, Sotek is gone, so how many halflings to beat the god Sotek? Well, I think if it took all of them to beat Khorne, it would probably take all of them to beat Sotek as well. That brings up an interesting question, though. Are halflings more resistant to poison than a standard person? Because Sotek, of course, manifests his wrath typically through swarms of venomous reptiles, snakes, asps, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm kind of curious. Like, would a halfling adventurer be more resistant to poison or not? I would imagine probably at least a little bit, just because of their diet. But that's kind of where I would be coming from on that. Hawk has a weird question. Would you be open to someone playing a Slith in Dark Heresy? I see where you're coming from, Hawk. Hawk's trying to convince me to run a Dark Heresy game, kind of like Lawhammer on the channel, and he wants to be part of it. A Slith in Dark Heresy, that'd be really tough. Honestly, that'd be super tough. I'm going to say probably not on that one. But anyway, let's see here. So where's this one? Lorebeards, what's your hottest diss on Be'lakor? Well, I mean, we did briefly cover him when we talked about the Chaos Warbands over on 40K, and he ended up in the absolute F tier. And there's a good reason for that. Be'lakor has a lot of strengths, but he's, at least in 40K, he is absolutely the last person anybody's going to call upon to use those strengths, because there's tons of people who do it better than him. Anything he can do, someone else in 40K can do it better. So my biggest diss on Be'lakor is that he is essentially superfluous in the grim darkness of the far future. He has no role that he feels that someone else doesn't already have and already like rule. So yeah, he's a try hard also ran. It's my biggest diss on Be'lakor. How many halflings to take on Ryan? That's the real question. I mean, it depends. Is it pie week or not? I imagine Ryan could probably fight off, 2 or 3 halflings on any given day, but if properly motivated, halflings can be quite dangerous. So there is that. Razor Dragontail says, now I'm imagining halflings having a poison dart frog charcuterie board. In Lustria, they probably do. That would be pretty rad, actually. I could see Lustrian halflings doing some stuff with like poisonous creatures for sure. That would be really interesting to kind of discuss and debate, like, because naturally their cuisine changes depending on where they are in the world, and Lustria would have a plethora of deadly and venomous things that we in the real world will cook. You can blowfish are very popular and also very dangerous dish that you can find at several restaurants, both here and abroad. So yeah, good point. And we've got, looks like there's a super chat. I'm still trying to get used to the non-super chats from Twitch. Dinoman95 says, no question, but a fun space fact. In the early universe, when it was denser and smaller, scientists think there may have been stars so big that they underwent a supernova and formed a black hole but survived. So for the next few million years, they just existed, force-feeding the black hole in their center. They think this is why supermassive black holes formed much earlier than expected in the universe. If you replace the sun with one, Pluto would orbit inside it. That's interesting. Dynaman, I love space facts, and that's really cool. Did you know that there are such things as white holes? Which is a pretty interesting phenomenon. It's, instead of absorbing everything, they kind of put out energy in a strange way. So yeah, check that out if you're curious about the theory of white holes. So and I'm gonna stop talking about holes before we get demonetized. All right, so we got, let's see here. Druzina Quaishin, hey, good to see you. Lorebeards, do we know if the Death Wolves have a decent number of wolfen given their affinity to wolves? I'm assuming this is a 40K thing. Death Wolves. I'm assuming you're talking about the Fangs of Mordecai. Well, so generally speaking, if you're not the 13th company, you don't have a ton of wolfen in 40K. Wolfen are considered more or less shameful. It's like a thing they don't really like to talk about. They definitely don't like to show it to people for the Space Wolves. And if you're looking for a decent number of wolfen, you're looking at the 13th company. That's where you're going to find the most wolfen in general in the Space Wolves. Sorry, that's the best I can do for you. I'm not sure what you mean with the Death Wolves. That may be is that a company or a chapter? I'm not sure. Have to check that out later. 5 foot. I think Ross just wrote Be'lakor's self-deletion note. I mean, Be'lakor he's unfortunately he's a punching bag in 40K. In fantasy, it seems like he's had his share of setbacks, shall we say. But you know what? He hasn't fought the halflings. I would like to see some Be'lakor v halfling fun. Demons in general v halflings could be pretty funny. Could be very entertaining. Could be. I mean, it depends on the writer. If there's a really good writer, it's going to be a good story. So there you go. I like this one. Dubba5125 says poison just becomes spicy food to halflings. I mean, technically, that's what capsaicin, which is the material. It's a substance which we perceive as, you know, spicy food. Technically, that is a poison. It's meant to be a deterrent. We as only as humans are like, oh, hurting ourselves is great. Let's do more of that, please. And Prince of the Parade says, I've been having this question. Could a Scaven clan exist that are slavers and are the reason why so many Scaven other species slave exist in Scavendom and clans? Been thinking about making a fan-made clan. I'm pretty sure one of the Scaven clans is focused on slavery. It's not Scryer, and it's not Eshin, and it's not Throt's clan. I forget which one that is. This would be a great question for Ryan. Unfortunately, he's not here, but could a clan exist that are slavers? Yeah, absolutely, no question about it. Slaves are currency with the Skaven. They don't typically tend to last that long. Obviously, Fastbinder the Strong being a great example of one that did last for quite a while, and they managed to escape out of the mines, which is a big achievement. So, yeah, you could have a clan that is just basically their whole thing is just going out and finding slaves and bringing them back. I feel like it would maybe overlap a little too much with some of the dark elf groups that do this, but if you could find a uniquely Skaven thing to do with it, I think it would be pretty sweet. Clan Rictus, according to Cuba, they are the ones that are into slaves. Okay. That I was pretty sure one of them did. Yeah. And Hawk, you're gonna have to help me out here because I hope I've been catching all the questions. Let's see here. I'll stick to either Kroot or Admech or something. Okay, Hawk. I mean, Kroot is definitely better than Slith. Admech would be even better than that because there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with the Adeptus Mechanicus, and there's actually a lot of really interesting specific feats that you can get as a tech priest in Dark Heresy. So I would urge you to look deeper into that. There's a lot of fun lore there too. Super Relax says, I wouldn't be shocked if the whole Moot isn't sacred ground. Given the halfling's relationship with the gods, I don't know. I mean, I could certainly construct a scenario in which that is true in my brain. Like I can see how that could happen. But my instincts are telling me that the halfling's very casual relationship with religion would mean that it just isn't that sacred. Like it doesn't have the same power as, say, Grand Theogenes Volkmar's ability to rebuke vampires and demons and things of that nature. Since Sylvania is so close, they can hide near there against foes that they are vulnerable to. Well, vampires, okay, so vampires just kind of avoid it. Well, the vampires don't, they learned to kind of avoid the Moot. It didn't happen right away. And they learned to avoid the Moot mostly, again, because halflings, don't taste very good and are also resistant to vampirism in general, and also are really good at fighting at range, which, guess what? Vampire accounts suck at fighting at range. Basically, magic's the only thing they got to attack you from a distance, whereas the halflings, that's basically all that's their whole thing. It'd be kind of interesting to dive into that a little more deeper, because the vampire accounts with their massive armies of undead, I would question whether an asymmetrical warfare approach like the guerrilla fighting that halflings typically tend to do, I would question whether that would be super effective against armies that you can replenish just from your local graveyards and things like that. But I'm sure the vampires would certainly find it annoying. And I would expect that's kind of the reason why the vampires generally avoid the Moot more than anything else is, A, they don't taste very good. Can't really make halfling vampires. B, it's just really annoying, and they attack you in ways that are not super fun to deal with. And C, there's just not a lot of glory in conquering the Moots. I imagine your typical vampire account is a little more prideful. He would want a victory he can brag about rather than well, I beat up on some halflings today. So good point though. I like the way your head is going, like the idea that I can certainly see parts of the Moot being sacred ground. If you had a particularly blessed area. The Halflings do have 6 gods, which I didn't get a chance to mention. Their names are, let's see, Esmeralda, goddess of the home, hearth, and hospitality. She's the one that supposedly Pie Week is in honor of. There's Phineas, the patron of tobacco and smoking. Josias is the god of farming and the weather. Hyacinth is the goddess of fertility and childbirth. Gaffy is the god of building and villages. And Quinsbury, my favorite name, Quinsbury is the god of ancestry and tradition. Now, obviously halflings don't consider tradition quite as strong as, say, dwarves, but they do consider ancestry a very, very important thing. So there is that. Okay. Here we go. Death Wolves are one of the companies. Ah, yes. All right. Cool. So I figured this is one of the great companies. It just didn't come to me in my mind immediately. They have more wolves than Space Marines. Okay. That's very doable because you have Thunder Wolves and you have Fenrisian wolf packs and things of that nature. But being close to wolves does not necessarily mean they have a lot of wolfen, because remember, wolfen is a very specific transformation that occurs to a space wolf. So yeah, being close to wolves doesn't mean that they would have more wolfen. However, let me flip that a little bit. So I'm going to say no, but yes. And the but yes part is, if you were a wolfen in the Space Wolves and you wanted to be in a particular great company, the Death Wolves would be a really good one to be in, because you would have fewer Space Wolves judging you for being a wolfen. Because it is, again, it's not especially something you really are proud of in the Space Wolves. It's kind of like an affliction or a curse. So yeah, if you were a wolfen, you probably would want to be in the Death Wolves, if nothing else. So I could see that as a thing that happens naturally over time, like it's an organic evolution of just wolfen like gravitating towards that particular company. But I don't believe there's any canonical evidence that they do have more wolfen than usual. But this is the thing I love about y'all's comments, is they make me start to think, and I have my knee-jerk reaction, and I say, well, no, and then I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, kind of. I can talk myself into it a lot with you guys, so I do appreciate the keeping my mind open and less ossified when it comes to these things. Clan Rictus thing is a lot of storm vermin, I think. Yeah, that's Thrut. That's Queek Headtakers, isn't it? Is Rictus? Yeah. Okay, maybe. So Face Octopus 4571, he says, I'm still catching up. Don't worry. It's just me. I'm flying solo for the rest of the show today. He says, are halflings being so free love why they are matriarchal, matrilineal? They usually don't know who their biological father is. Oof. Well, if you ask certain people, I'm sure that they would agree that it is about not knowing the father. The matriarchal, matrilineal thing, I'm not sure. Again, I feel like the halflings are a parody of some kind of UK regional culture, and I just don't know enough about it to say one way or the other whether that's associated with the culture that they're parodying. But I think I think the halfling culture's fascination with genealogy and ancestry means that who your mother is probably means a lot in their culture. And I don't know. I suppose it's something I can certainly see. It probably differs by clan. This is Warhammer. In Warhammer, there's hardly ever a thing you can say that applies to everything under a certain faction or group. Typically, Games Workshop's approach is to split that up into subgroups, and then the subgroups have their own like individual expressions of that thing. So certainly some clans do this because of the genealogical ancestry, the free love aspect. I wouldn't say all of them do, but certainly some. So there you go. And Oops, sorry. It would be very weird, says Benjamin Fraser, if any of the Scaven clans didn't procure or trade slaves. Oh, they all trade slaves and they all procure slaves. Like every clan takes slaves of the Scaven. What the guy was talking about was like, I believe what he was talking about was that, and I don't even know if it's a he, whatever they were talking about, is that I think they were talking about the idea of a clan whose focus was on collecting slaves and distributing slaves. Kind of like Scryer's focus is on technology and Rictus's is on storm vermin, and Throt's, I still can't remember Throt's clan. Throt's clan is about, experimenting on different creatures and things of that nature. So that's what I think. Okay, so we've got comment from Hawk. Four-armed snake people are cool, but Ross is right. They'll put some strain on the systems of Dark Heresy. Oh, yeah. Being a good player is buying into the system with the GM. Hey, thank you, Hawk. I am also a host on Lorebeards RPG, or Lorebeards and Roleplaying, I should say. I call it in my head Lorebeards RPG, but it's Lorebeards and Roleplaying is the actual name. And we did do an episode on being a good player. Thank you, Hawk, for remembering that. And if you guys want to check out the Lorebeards 40K channel or the Lorebeards and Roleplaying channel, we'd love to have you. So, yeah, come listen to me and my other co-hosts ramble about the grim darkness of the far future or any possible role-playing game that you may be interested in. All right, so we've got a thing here from Dubba5125. I imagine with how open halflings are, they would definitely bite some junks off. That would be a very dishonorable way to go if you're a vampire. Ooh, oh yeah. Yeah, nobody would want to tell that tale in the halls of the vampire counts. The Blood Council would not look kindly on that. Benjamin Fraser says it might also not be possible to raise them as skeletons or zombies, so the classic undead invasion tactics don't work so well. I cannot think of any model that is a halfling skeleton or zombie. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying off the top of my head, I can't think of any that are out there. So that's a really interesting point. Maybe that is true. Again, it may be a case of just how the spell is worded, or it may be a case of the vampire not particularly wanting really small zombies and skeletons. But yeah, if that is true, if that is the case, that would definitely make invading the Moot by the vampire counts even less attractive and interesting as a thing. You guys will have to tell me if there is a model for a halfling skeleton or halfling zombie, because I don't think there is, but I might be wrong. Okay. Razor Dragontail says, I half expected the gods to be called after Wendy's, McDonald's, KFC, Domino's, Burger King, Subway. Yeah, having gods named after restaurants would be hilarious. Got a 40K question. What's the value of a Necron warrior and weapons compared to Custodes? Like monetary value? Because we did have it. So on the 40K side, we did have an episode recently where we talked about the Adeptus Custodes, and we talked about how basically one of their suits of armor is like the value of a single planet. Necrons individually are very valuable to the Adeptus Mechanicus. They are willing to trade vast amounts of wealth and material to get their hands on Necron tech, and a intact Necron warrior would be a pretty good bargain. You could get some really good value out of that. Would you get a whole planet? Maybe not. I would say they're not quite as valuable monetarily as a Custodes in terms of what you could get for it. But you could get a lot if you spoke to the right people. Call, I think, has a fairly high ranking Necron on board his ship in stasis that he's very proud of. And with good reason. So Queek is Moors, Tretch is Rictus. Craventail's Rictus. Okay, right. Sorry. Got my Scaven clans mixed up. This is what happens when a 40K guy goes on a fantasy channel. I knew that they were a part of clans. I just didn't know which ones. So my mistake. Apologies, everybody. And Prince of the Parade points out that Queek is Moors. Moors has loyalty and more powerful storm vermin. Rictus just has a lot of Scaven in general. Yeah, though Tretch, I want to say Tretch like carries a slave capturing device, like a man catcher, as his weapon. I think Tretch's clan might be the one that you might look at first, but again, I'm not super expert on Skaven. One of the best comments we've had on the 40K side is that the Imperium is essentially Space Skaven. And I was like, I can't stop thinking about that now. All right, so got a super chat. Thank you very much. Darius Rose, 9909. Appreciate your support, sir. Soprano crew versus Halfling gang. Who wins in a brawl? Okay, this is definitely bias on my part, but I'm going to give it to the Halflings. The Sopranos are they're good at what they do, but the Halflings are just scrappier, in my opinion. I think the Halflings would be more willing to go the extra mile to get things done. What do they say about Kaiser Soze in the Usual Suspects? He has the will to do what must be done, and I think the Halflings have that, whereas the Sopranos maybe not so much. Also, I think the Halflings probably have a tighter family group, so I would give it to them. And we've got another super chat. Darius Rose, 9909, coming in again. Thank you, sir. Am I missing? Is that the same one twice? It is the same one twice. Okay. I don't know why that happened. My apologies. But I did already answer that. So we're going to move on to another question. Molder, Clan Molder is Throts. Yes, thank you. And that's the one that experiments on to create new types of creatures and things of that nature. I'm getting all kinds of education today. Moors, according to Prince of the Parade, Moors is Storm Vermin loyalty. Molder's monsters. Richter is Storm Vermin numbers. Okay, fair enough. Scryer's tech. Pestilence is plague. There's a clan for Graciers, I forget, and there's a few smaller clans. I think what we were saying is that this again, I'm kind of speaking for this person. So if you are that person, speak up and say, clarify. But I think what you were talking about is like if there is a smaller clan whose focus is taking slaves. So there you go. Nagash style necromancy is human centric, says Face Octopus. Yeah, I can't imagine a necromancer intentionally coming up with spells for halflings. It just doesn't seem like something they would ever really think about, And halfling skeletal model is more of a meta decision because no one wants child-sized skeletons and zombies. Ooh, good point. Yeah, that would be a little awkward, wouldn't it? You'd have to explain a lot in that model visually to make it stand out as a halfling and not a child. Oh, good point. Really good point. Morning to Crescent says Vlad just doesn't want to risk them stealing the Von Karstein ring. Oh, they would want to too. They would absolutely want to steal that ring. Yeah, absolutely. And Hawk says, I doubt he doubts there's any skeletons or zombies of halflings because there's very few regular models of halflings to begin with. Yeah, so I mean, you could look at that absence of models in the range as evidence to suggest that they just can't be or are not commonly raised as zombies and skeletons, which, as that other person pointed out, would make invading the Moot more difficult and less fun. Face Octopus, maybe he's talking about they both have disintegration weapons. Okay, I'm not sure what you're talking about there. I'm sorry, Face Octopus. Throt has the man catcher. Okay, I was wrong. It's not Tretch. It's Throt. Okay, yeah, good point. I knew one of them did. You guys are catching me out today. I'm not much of a Scaven guy. We already talked about the Rictus having a lot of storm vermin. And yes, so Ice Veins is asking, are you soloing? I was not. Unfortunately, Sotek had to bow out for a headache. He has a migraine and had to bow out. So I've been running the ship for the last 20 minutes, and we'll be running the ship for another 12 minutes. So you can ask me anything you like. I'm basically answering questions right now about just about everything, including a lot of questions about Scaven and a lot of questions about halflings. Do you think Rictus is named after the Mad Max guy? No. Far. That guy was, I think, later. Oh, yep. Prince of the Parade is helping Ice Veins figure it out. The Grey Seers are a clan. Yeah, okay. I didn't know that. But then he follows up saying there's not a clan. Okay, so which one is it? I'm confused. The Halflings would fight way dirtier than the Sopranos. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that makes sense. So Prince Bray says, yes, that's what I meant. He meant a small Scaven clan who focuses on taking slaves. Honestly, I kind of want to like design that now. I can imagine, what are those things called? The doom wheels, pulling little caravans or trains of cages with slaves just packed to the gills inside those things, because Scaven wouldn't care about, they just pack them in like a Tokyo subway. They would not care about the health and well-being of slaves is just not something Scaven really pay a lot of mind to. So I could see something like that easily. That would be pretty cool. Okay, so we've got Spitfire says the Greyseer clan is just called the Greyseer clan, but they control Clan Scrutin, which are spies. Clan Scrutin. Well, that's a very Games Workshop. You and your names. I dig it. So here we go. Skara, Prince of the Parade. Ross, think fast. Name every Council of 13 member. 1 point for every correct name and clan. Bro. No. I'm not even going to attempt that. Nope. No, sir. The best I can do is the legendary lords from Total War Warhammer, which I have played a lot. So there's that. Wesley says it's not stealing; it's lending without vocal consent for the halflings. So yeah, this is something I wanted to bring up earlier. The idea of the halflings and the stealing things. Their culture is such to the point where they will often walk off with other people's belongings because they mistakenly believe that other person will just take it back at some point in the future, because that's how it works in the Moot. This is not like a communist thing. This is not some sort of for the common good bit. It's just they do tend to treat personal property as more I know I'm undercutting what I just said, but they do tend to treat it more as communal property. It's like, you have a really nice pen there on your desk. Well, I'm going to take that pen because I know you're going to come over and take it back. That's one of the factors of their culture when it comes to stealing things. Iceman says, I do believe there was a halfling vampire fantasy. Oh, okay. I couldn't find one in my research, but if you can give me a name, I'll be happy to check them out. My research indicated that they're very resistant to vampirism. So who knows? And okay. Hawk is saying for Necrons and Custodes, both having disintegration weapons. Okay, so is he talking about value? I'm sorry, I'm still confused. Yes, they both can carry certain types of disintegration weapons. That is true. I'm still lacking some of the context, and I apologize if I'm just being super dense and I'm not getting it. It's not intentional, I promise you. And we've got Lorebeards. Did you ever listen to the Warhammer versus Star Wars fan audio drama? A relative of Obi-Wan Sherlock Clouseau, who's a rogue trader, has a minor role. Have not listened to it yet. That's interesting, though, that Obi-Wan Sherlock Clouseau has a minor role, or a relative of his has a minor role. So for people who don't know, Obi-Wan Sherlock Clouseau was the name of the very first Inquisitor in the first edition of Warhammer 40k, which is also called Rogue Trader. And it's very tongue-in-cheek. Like early Warhammer 40k is extremely tongue-in-cheek. Just like early Warhammer Fantasy in a lot of ways. And so this was Rick Priestley just having a goof back in the 80s with the Inquisitor's name. Obviously, 40k has evolved far more seriously, has gotten a lot more serious and left a lot of that satire behind. Unfortunately, in my opinion, some of the satire. And honestly, some of the silly parts of 40K are my favorite bits. Obi-Wan Sherlock Clouseau is just a little too goofy even for me. Like there's a spectrum. And so I'm like, I don't know. Obi-Wan Sherlock Clouseau. I don't know. Audio dramas are tough to listen to given some of the stuff that we do in our normal life. I think Alexis and I discussed it for 40K because I know you've brought this up before, and it just doesn't seem like it's something we're not currently willing to do it. I'll tell you what, if you want to do like $100 super chat, I'll do it. I will commit to it. I'll rope in Alexis and the two of us will do it. $100. That's the price. All right. We got another super chat from Icefiends88. Hey, he says a little something for soloing. Hey, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. It's a lot of pressure to do this by yourself. Fortunately, I have some experience hosting a lot of podcasts and things of that nature, so it's a little more natural to me, but it's still there's a tension right here, and I appreciate you, brother. Thank you. All right, we got another one from Massive Derp. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the support. Other than that sketchy cult doing something with outsiders, what plots are brewing in the Moot? Plots brewing in the Moot. Well, I think, we talked about that the halflings tend to get overlooked a lot. And as far as I'm aware, there's not any major schemes going on specifically in the Moot. And the sketchy outsiders. Oh, and you're talking about the children in the corn bit too, right? Yeah, I don't know. There's not enough attention paid to halflings. They need a lot more attention and love to get to the point where they're having ongoing storylines and plots and schemes. There's frankly, Vito is the only named halfling I was able to find from a Black Library novel. When Sotek was talking about the Go Check and Felix one, I'm like, I don't even know that. I didn't even know that was a thing. So yeah, I don't know. Lumpen Croup is probably the only him and his standard bearer, I think, are the only two named halflings I can find in the miniature line. And then there was Fastbinder the Strong, who we talked about as that one legend. And then there's that one Electrocount Elmandrada Moonrow. And somebody asked if that was a response to or a reference to the Monroe Doctrine. It absolutely is. Absolutely. Her name is Elmandrada Moonrow, and she created the Moonroe Doctrine, which is the Monroe Doctrine. It's Warhammer having a goof. Yeah, I don't know. Good question, Massive Derp. This would be a good one. I would throw this to Andy and Sotek. These guys probably know more about that and could probably riff on it a bit. There is that guy in Bogenhoffen, which you specifically asked about the Moot, so that's why I kind of ignored there is a name that the Godfather in Bogenhoffen does have a name, Matchwick, I believe. And yeah, he's got some sinister stuff going on. He's basically ruling the underworld in Bogenhoffen. So that might be the only place I would go right away for some kind of scheme or plot. Alternatively, we could pick up on some of those threads we talked about with Sotek about the idea that they're a secret economic power with a lot of soft strength, soft power in the empire, and maybe do something with that. But yeah, I don't know. Good point anyways. All right, we're getting down to the end here, so I'm going to try and rush through any of these questions. Would halflings have magic eternal soups like in D&D? They can't do magic in Wifrip. So yes or no, but yes, question mark. Because as Sotek and I described, you could easily see some sort of alchemy-esque cooking that would have supernatural effects. Clan Scruton. Yeah, okay, that we did mention that before. Leon Grotsky, thank you. Appreciate you, Leon Grotsky. Ricky Chapman, there is an Evil Dead forest in the Moot. Is there? Okay. I was not aware of that. I'll have to look into that. Living Legend says the Halfling Vampire was made by Conrad von Karstein as a joke. Huh. Okay. Again, I wasn't aware of that. Was an older bit that Hawk confirms this, and then Vlad killed it very quickly. Interesting. Didn't know that. It's of questionable canonicity. Well, I mean, so we actually mentioned the Storm of Chaos on this very particular episode, and the Storm of Chaos is absolutely a alternate timeline that never actually occurred. So yeah, Warhammer has these things, and they do prop up from time to time. Nestor Vitumber says necromancy owes much to the mortuary cult's extensive teaching on souls, and they only studied humans. Fair. Again, I just don't see necromancy as studying a lot about halflings or doing things with halflings. Necromancy derived from Nagash can be used to reanimate near human creatures like halflings or ogres, but I imagine it's much more complicated. Okay, interesting point. We on this very show we talked about the Dogs of War, and there's a Dogs of War unit, and I can't remember the name of it. I'm so sorry, but it's an undead unit, and the guy in charge has a sword that whatever he kills basically returns as a skeleton, and his particular unit had orc skeletons and human skeletons, and I think some other non-human skeletons. The Cursed Company. Yes, thank you, Mr. Rotumbra. Thank you. Yeah, the Cursed Company. The Cursed Company had non-human skeletons in it, but that's the only time I can think of it being a thing. So that's pretty interesting. There's a lot of pots brewing in the Moot, says Wesley's. Yes, agreed. There are a lot of pots brewing. And unfortunately, that is going to be the end of the show because we are at the end of our time. Appreciate you guys so much for welcoming me to come on and be a guest for Lorebeards Fantasy. It's been a lot of fun talking to you guys. I really enjoy discussing Warhammer Fantasy lore because it is one of my great loves. I know I'm the 40K guy, but I also love Warhammer Fantasy. Ask me sometime about Drakenfels. He's like my favorite guy to talk about. But it's been a real pleasure, and I hope to see you guys again in the future. Although I don't want to replace Andy or anything like that. I just, if the opportunity arrives, I love coming to talk to you guys. So once again, appreciate you so much, and look for more Lorebeards coming next week. Cheers, everybody.